Hello, all of you wonderful people out there. Welcome to another episode of Black and White Reviews. My name is Will.
And I'm Chuck.
And I'm Lee.
And this week we are going to be discussing the 2021 film, my god, The Matrix Resurrections. Written and directed by Lana Wachowski, starring... Go ahead, what were you going to say?
Go ahead.
Sorry,
no, go ahead.
I said
It's already begun.
Yeah, really. I said
already
written and
happened.
directed by Lana Wachowski, starring Keanu Reeves, Carrie Ann Moss, Ayaya Abdullah Mateen II. Is that how you pronounce his name?
Sure.
You want to take a stab at it, Lee? Didn't think so. Jonathan Groff, Jessica Henwick, and Neil Patrick Harris.
Yaya. His name is Yaya.
Yaya? You're going to pronounce it?
Yaya.
Okay, fine.
Yaya Abdul Mateen.
The second. Yaya. Yeah, fine. Jessica Henwick, Neil Patrick Harris, and Jada Pinkett Smith. Okay.
Don't forget Christina Ricci for half a second.
Sure. So we've all been beating around the bush with this one for a little while now. We've teased this one to oblivion, and now it's finally time to talk about it. I'm going to actually go first on this one. If anybody out there listening, or Chuck, if you've actually taken a listen to Lee and I when we reviewed Dr. Sleep, I have a very similar problem here. I think the first act and part of the second act are really good. There are some really good ideas that are introduced. There are new concepts and everything that's going on. The character and the way that everything is established, A+ across the board from me. And then the story takes a really weird turn, and I ended up not liking it all that much. I don't know, man. I just think it relied way too much on nostalgia, and then it basically descended into, now they both Neo and Trinity have special powers. Neo is basically a Jedi, and this whole movie basically turns into, well, they have to be kept together because they're in love and they generate energy. Sure.
So you kind of just hit the nail on the head right there. This is basically the rise of Skywalker.
Yes.
They're a forced dyad.
Yes.
And I was like, wait, didn't we just get a movie like this? Oh yeah, the rise of Skywalker. Like they're out of ideas now. They're like, oh, remember when we made this person really cool? Well, now they're not cool anymore. But when they're with somebody, then they're cool. Oh, okay. So now, I guess it's all about who you know. You know?
I guess so.
It's all about...
I guess so. Chuck? Thoughts on... opening thoughts on this movie?
I really liked the movie.
Okay.
It's not my... I'll put it up there. It's not my favorite movie. It's not my favorite Matrix movie. Nothing will obviously beat the first one.
Okay. Do you think... I asked Lee the same question we were off camera, and I'm going to ask the both of you again. Chuck, I'll let you go first. Do you think this movie deserves to have the title Matrix attached to it?
Yes.
Lee?
And here's the reason why.
Lee? Yes or no?
Attached, yes. It be called Matrix Resurrections? No.
Okay.
I don't think it should. I feel like it could be attached, but more as a tagline. Like, blah, 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 return to the Matrix or something, Like, I don't know. I just don't feel like it. Yeah.
I don't think this. I don't think this feels anything like a Matrix movie.
See, I do, and here's
Very different feel.
So here's my overall feel of the movie. So the first movie I saw that did something like this was it Sean William Scott when he played in Bulletproof Monk? Have you ever seen Bulletproof Monk?
Yes, I have.
When there's always the one who carries the scroll. At the end of this movie, it ended up being the two that carried the scroll. Very similar in this case. How I looked at it is this is the 7th rendition of The Matrix. There was Neo in the first trilogy was the 6th rendition.
Mm-hmm.
And there was predecessors, 5, and how I looked at this and how I viewed it is and the way I took it is in every rendition, Neo, whatever version of Neo, is always the one. And Morpheus is always the one that finds Neo and takes him out. It's just in a different way. In this case, because we still had we still had actors that were still alive, that could play the same role. They just found a way to bring those actors back into it. I think if Keanu Reeves or Carrie Ann Moss weren't around, or if they weren't like they did with Morpheus, they would have found a way to change the look of the character, but it would still carry the name Neo or still carry the name Trinity, like they did with Morpheus in this. But Morpheus is always the one in every rendition of the Matrix to always free Neo, and Neo is always the one. It's just in this case, now it's not just Neo. They went a little bit further with it, and they said, okay, Neo with Trinity, without giving the whole thing away in the front, actually is the one. So when I look at it that way, I was like, ooh, I actually like the story now, because it's like, okay, the architect in this one.
The analyst.
It's the analyst. It's the architect. It's the same character, because he says my predecessor.
No, it's not.
No.
It's not the same character at all.
He talks about his predecessor
in a negative light. He talks about the architect in a very negative light.
Right,
I mean, we're gonna get into it a lot later. But just
what I'm saying is that was his predecessor. So he is just a newer rendition of him. He's just doing it differently now, because he's the one who controls the Matrix, whereas because he understands emotion, all kind of fun stuff. So, whereas in the original trilogy, he was more, the math behind it and the equation behind it. And this one, we'll get into it more, is all about the emotion. So I chose to, if I looked at it just from nostalgia's sake, it probably would have been a letdown. I looked at it more from, it's just the seventh rendition of the movie, and I thought they did a really good job.
I look at it from nostalgia's sake because this movie looks at itself from nostalgia's sake. This movie is so self-aware that you have no other way of looking at it. That's
right. And I do see the nostalgia, but I don't look at it solely from that perspective. Because I mean, they even do say the word nostalgia in the movie
more than once.
So I get that, but if we had a rendition, if we saw the fifth rendition before the previous one, again, it would have been nostalgia. And it just, but we never saw the first 5 renditions of the Matrix. We only saw the 6th one. Now we're seeing the 7th one. Neo is always the one. Morpheus is always the one that finds the one. It's just a matter of who plays that part.
So if all that's the case, just go ahead and recast Keanu Reeves. It would have made a lot more sense. If they got rid of if they got rid of Keanu Reeves and they get rid of Carrie Ann Moss, and I would have been perfectly happy with that. This would have been a better movie, because what you're saying right now, sir, doesn't really match up with what the movie's trying to convey. And to me, it doesn't. If what you're saying is Morpheus is always the one to find Neo, and Neo is always the one, and this is just a different iteration of what's actually going on within like the real world, then he shouldn't look the same, just like Morpheus doesn't look the same.
Well, he doesn't look the same.
Who doesn't look the same? Keanu Reeves?
Yeah, but no.
In the Matrix, he does not look the same.
In the real world,
there's no Morpheus in the Matrix. There's only a Morpheus in this modal that Tom created.
Right.
So he wasn't going to exist.
But he then
until
existed.
because he created it.
I'm really curious if like just Lawrence Fishburne and Hugo Weaving looked at the script and said, "No, I don't want to be attached to this at all. I will pass. Thank you very much."
Well, just like Michael Keaton passed on Batman Forever.
No,
he did. Michael Keaton would have been in Batman Forever. He specifically said he saw the script.
Lee, I give you that. Lee is right, and for all those listening, this is Lee's way of just bringing in his favorite movie into our podcast.
Yeah. That was
a different movie, Batman and Robin.
That was a different set of circumstances, though. At least, like, Lana Wachowski is attached to this. Like, Tim Burton wasn't attached to Forever at all. So there's
no, not at all.
You gotta.
And the Wachowskis, both of them are in it. His sibling, their sibling, helped produce the movie. They just didn't help direct the movie. So They were both attached.
They were
to
both
this
attached
because
to it, but Lana was the one who was kind of
The director.
she was
Right.
she was the one who was at the helm of this thing. And there's actually a couple of lines that are thrown into this movie that make me think that she did not want to make this at all. It was just like she was forced into doing it. There's actually a line when we'll get into it later on, but the line,
like the entire
Warner
movie
Brothers-
that says like, I don't want to do this.
Warner Brothers wants a fourth Matrix, and they are going to do it with or without us or not. That's a line in this movie. And it's
Right.
just, it's so on the nose about what
Do
the
we have a
motivation.
problem, buddy? You want to step outside?
Well, the thing is they kind of set themselves up for it because at the end of the third movie, when they're like, I guess we'll see Neo again, and then it's like roll credits.
They
at the
left
end
it
of-
open-ended. And I agree with
They
that.
left it, if they closed it off, then they would never have been forced to do it. I mean,
I didn't see a
they're not the
full-on...
MCU. They're not trying to find a way to actually resurrect characters. They set themselves up for this.
I didn't see, when you watch the end of Matrix Revolution, I didn't see like a full-on resurrection coming. I more thought
Not
of like
like
what
this,
you
no.
laid out when you started to go on your little preamble, Chuck, when you said this is just another iteration of the Matrix and Neo is always going to be the one. I just always assumed that if they ever did reboot this franchise, we were going to get a completely different Neo that isn't Keanu Reeves.
And I agree with you. I
And
think
if that
it would have
happened, I
been-
think this movie would have been a lot better.
I think it would have been better, 100%. I agree with you. I think it would have been 100% better, because then it would have been just the next part of the saga.
Right.
It's like when you watch, if you watch the Star Wars saga, the first saga in the first trilogy, not the first one created, but the prequels, was about Anakin. The second one was about Luke, and it was, you saw the generational thing doing that. If they had done it that way, it would have been better. They didn't do it that way, but I still appreciated the movie.
See, I think that would have been a good idea too. If Neo and Trinity had a child, and now all of a sudden that child is like the Messiah figure, like in this new franchise, I think that would have been a cool idea too.
Yeah, but they would still have to find a way to resurrect. Yeah, if they had a child before she died,
Right. They
but if you
would
look at
have
the
had to
first
shoehorn
trilogy,
something
though,
like that in, but it would have.
they only had 72 hours, and there would have been no way that she could have been and had a kid in 72 hours.
No, not at all. You're absolutely right.
But the essence of the one could have been, they could have been put into anybody in the Matrix. I think they just brought Carrie-Anne Moss and Keanu Reeves back into it because they're the face of the Matrix.
Nostalgia.
That
nostalgia.
purpose only. The same story without them, it would have made it better. But I'll still say it. Some people are like, I really didn't like the movie. I enjoyed the movie, and I've watched it 3 times now, and I still enjoy it.
I've watched it 3 times as well, and
in the order I go Matrix Resurrections, then Reloaded, and then I go Resolutions.
I put Reloaded way above this. I think Reloaded was a much better film. I'm sorry. No, you're entitled. You're entitled to your opinion and how you feel about this, man. Go for it. Wear it.
I like it.
Okay.
And I know it's gonna. And that's why I was looking forward to this conversation, because I know it's
we're
gonna
divided.
be.
We're
All
divided.
divided.
That's perfectly fine. That's kind of what I want this to be a lot more of. But anyways, let's get into the review properly. So we begin the movie with this character named Bugs, who is essentially watching a reenactment of Trinity's introduction in the first film.
Who is also the main female character in Marvel's Iron Fist.
Is she really?
She is the main female character in Marvel's Iron Fist.
Huh.
Yep.
I didn't know.
She is the love.
didn't
She
know
is the
that.
love interest of Danny Rand. Yep.
Wow. Okay.
Yep.
Well, good for her. She's spreading her wings a little bit. I wish nothing but the best for her career. So the reenactment that this Bugs character is watching is the same, but it's a little different. Starts out exactly the same. A Trinity character is sitting at a computer terminal, and she is surrounded by the police, cops, feds, whatever you want to call it. Only in this version, whereas the original, Trinity, escapes and gets away and she's fine. In this one, she is absolutely captured. And they're talking, they're having Bugs is having a conversation with the operator who is in this film.
Seek.
Zeke?
Well, Seek. Sequoia.
Sequoia?
Seek. Sequoia.
Seek? Okay.
Seek. S-E-Q.
Seek.
Like Sequoia, but
Fine.
abbreviated.
Okay.
Yeah.
And
Nicknamed.
they know they're watching a reenactment. They know that this was programmed by something or someone. They just don't know why. I don't know. It's one of those things in this movie that is like, at first I thought that, the machine world or the Matrix as a program was making these reenactments to try to figure out what exactly it did wrong and how are they going to correct it later on down the line. Like, here's a contingency. What if Trinity is captured? Does the event still play out as such? That's kind of what I thought this movie was doing, and I really liked that idea. I didn't think it was bad. I thought it was a great way to introduce nostalgia and have a callback in a really creative way. And that's one of the first things that bugs me, is because the idea like this kind of ends up going nowhere.
Well, the what I saw in it is they're going through these modals to try to understand, because, as we all find out,
Yes.
she sees Neo when he, quote unquote, jumps off the roof. And it's a different person, but she sees Neo. And after she sees Neo and she's, taken out of the Matrix, she's going through all these modals to see what originally happened, to understand who Neo is, to try to understand what's going on, to figure out who Trinity is, to see the whole story so she can actually follow this trail of breadcrumbs, per se, to find Neo and then release him. That's how I took it.
I'm surprised that, you know what? No, I'm not even going to say that. Anyways, just like the original, agents show up and we get a classic line. The lieutenant there, wow, we already sent up 2 teams. No, Lieutenant, your men are already dead. And it's this character, Yaya, that Lee corrected me on. Thank you very much.
Well,
he's
Smith.
who's supposed to be playing Smith, but at the same time, later on, we find out that he's Morpheus. And he goes upstairs, and it's
He's Smithius.
Smithy. Smithius.
Smorpheus.
Anyways, so we're off to the races. Bugs gets spotted, and she basically has to run for her life. There's a scene right here where she's running clear as day, like in a straight line, and the agents and police open fire on her and hit nothing. So I'm like, okay, yeah, they're bringing stormtroopers into this as well. Great job. All right. While she's running away, this Yaya Smith Morpheus character grabs her and pulls her into a door. It's the same concept of back doors that we see out of Reloaded, which I thought was really cool. That was a clever way to bring everything together. They have a. Go ahead. You want to say something about that?
What was cool about that? It was actually it was a key store.
I know. I noticed that too.
I thought that was kind of cool too.
It was a nice
store
little,
that was like made keys.
It was a nice little throwback. He pulls her in, and they are face to face. They don't shoot each other. They just both have like an understanding of who they are and what they're supposed to do. This entire conversation is taking place in Mr. Anderson, Neo's apartment that we see in the first Matrix movie. And this Bugs character is just over the moon that they found this room. It's really odd how excited she is. This Yaya character reveals himself to be Morpheus, and then he has to find Neo, and she gushes and throws her arms around him, and they both attempt to make their escape. Basically, right now is we get the first introduction of the red pill, blue pill concept, and he obviously takes the red one, and then for some reason he starts to act very drunk. I thought this was.
It was actually really funny when he comes up and he's like, "Hey guys."
I thought what was funnier.
It was actually pretty funny.
I thought what was funnier was they're back in the hallway, and this Bugs character puts her sunglasses on him, and he's like, "Oh, I've never wore glasses like these before," and it was just like, "What are we doing?" So he's acting very.
Did you catch the other agent's name?
I didn't. I'm go for
when
it.
He actually when he kind of like he doesn't just, because the door was at an angle in the key room, so when he comes in, he like falls up.
Yes,
to stand up in the room, and he looks at the guy, and I think I think just because of the person they use, the other agent's name was Agent White.
Yeah.
And then he was Smith. And what that brought me back to was
Men in Black.
You ever see Men in Black?
Yeah.
This is Mr. White.
And that's what that brought me back to. Then they go back into the hallway of all the doors because they're trying to get to the right spot.
So while they're in the apartment for a brief moment, they do get into a little conversation, and there's a little exposition dump right here where she basically explains to Morpheus that we're inside of a modal, and a modal is a simulation to evolve programs. And I'm still thinking this is just a way for the Matrix to determine exactly what it did wrong in the last iteration and how everything kind of fell to pieces. I'm still operating under that concept because the movie is telling me that, and again, it's a really interesting idea. So I just wanted to get that out there. They then go on to explain how each of them got free or they broke their attachment to what the Matrix was. Bugs' explanation is she saw Neo and it opened her mind. Morpheus' explanation is he saw raindrops that turned into a pattern.
No, they weren't raindrops.
He was sitting inside.
Condensation.
Hang on, he was sitting inside of a coffee shop eating, and it's raining outside, and he notices that the raindrops are turning into patterns on the glass coming down, and he's like, "I just saw a loop. It's repetition. We're just stuck inside this prison." Like that was the explanation.
If you look really, really close at the mirror in the bathroom and the window,
Yes,
it's
You can see
actually
the
Matrix.
it's the Matrix code.
Right. So he actually saw code. He was recognizing that there's code in all of this. You see that at the very, very end when Trinity sees it, she sees code everywhere. It was just, I thought that was a very cool thing. They actually took like the condensation
Yep.
and turned condensation into code. I thought that was really cool.
Yeah, it was very
I
well done.
liked it.
It was subtle, and that's
It
what
was
made it
very
really
subtle.
cool.
Okay.
We had to look for it.
It was a little too subtle for me then because I did not notice that at all. Wow.
Yeah, no, it was really cool. It was very well done. It was hard to see initially.
They end up making their grand escape by jumping off of a roof, and they just basically fall into the void, and then you see the Matrix binary just kind of consume them, which I thought was really interesting. Later on in the movie, we get to a certain part of exposition where they basically say, "Hey, we don't need phones anymore. We can just escape pretty much wherever we want." I mean, they're basically using mirrors. They're
mirrors.
mostly using mirrors, but here, like when they jump off the roof, they don't use a mirror. They just kind of fall into nothing.
But wasn't it raining out?
I use there
Yes.
is gonna say like the reflection of the water on the ground.
It's a puddle. It's a puddle.
It's a puddle.
It's a puddle.
Okay, sure.
Sure.
It's all about reflections, so not so much mirrors, but reflections.
It's how they
Yeah.
create portals.
With the
That
reflection?
makes sense. Mm-hmm.
Okay, sure. Okay.
Sure.
So, anyways, we then cut to Thomas Anderson, who is working at his computer. He is surrounded by Matrix nostalgia, memorabilia, and toys and statues, the whole gambit. We find out that he's a game designer, that the Matrix was actually a video game, and the the game company that he's working for, or the software company that he's working for, is Deus Machina, which is ridiculous. He then goes to a coffee shop with a really annoying buddy of his. And who should walk into the coffee shop but Trinity? She walks in, they meet for the first time.
Sorry, that's Tiffany. Tiffany.
I'm calling her Trinity. They meet for what appears to them to be the first time, but we all know that it's not. And there's an instant connection between the two of them. They shake hands and they have that moment, and it's touching and the whole thing. And then all of a sudden, go ahead.
I thought it took me a couple times before I put this together, but in all of their reflections, you see another version.
You see
of
another
them.
version of themselves, yeah.
It's not in this scene, but yes, you start to see that throughout the movie.
You actually do see it. You
shortly
actually do
after
see
this.
it in this scene when he goes to pick up his cup of coffee. The reflection on
You
the
see,
table.
you see him. You see him. He's talking to you.
Yes.
See a bald,
Yes.
Yeah.
the old bald version of him.
Yes.
And I started thinking about it. I'm like, how does he know that if they're all seeing if the Matrix created this digital version of them that everybody else is seeing and only you can see yourself as this, that's where the connection of the one for these two came into play. He can still see her for her, and she can still see him for him.
Right.
And they can see each other for themselves, but nobody
Right.
else but them sees it unless they're unplugged.
Right.
Right.
So he sees Tiffany or Trinity as
He's seeing
Trinity.
Carrie Ann Moss. He's not
Right,
seeing.
yeah. Whereas
We find out later
blonde
that
girl.
there is a reflection, and she is actually a blonde woman. He's not seeing the blonde woman. He's seeing Carrie Ann Moss.
Yeah.
That
and
I
that's where
understand.
that's where like in the conversation that they're having that comes up later on when she's like, I told my son that I look. How do I?
I told my husband. Yeah.
my husband I look just like her, and he started laughing because he
Makes
doesn't see he doesn't see her that way.
not at all.
No.
Right. But Neo does, and she does.
Yes.
So that what I thought was a cool connection as well too.
I do think it's pretty cool too, the way that they do that. They what do they call it later on? Residual self-image, but they don't call it residual self-image in this movie. They call it something completely different.
The digital
self-image.
something.
Yes, digital
Yeah.
self-image. So like we were saying, they're in the coffee shop. They meet for the first time. I guess is the term that I want to use there. And it's quickly broken up by her husband, who walks in, and her husband's name is Chad. Do either one of you know who Chad is?
Chad is every character played in the Truman Show to distract him from knowing what's really going on.
Aside from that,
So that's what I wanted to bring up this entire time. This movie is like 50% the Truman Show.
I did not get that at all.
Oh, totally.
I did not
the
get
entire
that at
thing is like
all.
all this stuff is happening around him, and he's freaking out. Like, what is going on? And he's trying to sort that out. Like everybody who's been programmed, or like all the ones programmed, all the ones who are behind it, are just trying to keep him at bay, or keep him and her basically distracted
From knowing what's going on.
from knowing what's going on. And you see all this stuff kind of playing out around him. You got Jude, who's basically he's his handler.
Yeah.
You've got Cush, who's her handler, just like his best friend, bringing the beers over a Truman Show. Same idea.
Right.
And it was watching it going, I'm like, oh man, you've got like Matrix mixed with the Truman Show, mixed with Rise of Skywalker. Yeah, so it was
I don't know. I don't get a Truman Show vibe from any of that. I mean, the Truman Show was a little bit more nefarious because it was, for the purpose of a television show. This turns into something completely different that I don't care for, that I don't want to get into.
Well,
right
I
now.
think it's Truman Show in the sense of
people trying to stop them.
Other people know, like Jude, the guy he's in the coffee shop with.
Yeah, that's what I was just saying.
He knows what's going on. He knows that Neo is Neo.
Well, it's a program. Of course he knows. I mean,
and he's doing everything he can, and that's why when Bugs comes up and says he knows what's going on,
okay, so first of
he's
all,
preventing Neo from knowing the truth.
the problem that I have with your Jude theory is if that's the case, why does he introduce the two of them? Like, he bites the bullet. Like, I'm going to be a buddy for you right now, and I'm going to introduce the two of you. When he gets up and he goes over and he has a conversation with Trinity. Oh, by the way, this is such and such. Like, he's the one who initializes that introduction.
That goes along with what the analyst says later on about, like, longing for a life you didn't have, but desiring a life. He said something like that.
Like hope and desire are the same.
He also has a lot of dialogue about keeping them close, but not too close. Like, they can circle each other, but they can never actually, like, come into contact. Like, that's
Right,
the
I
whole
think
point.
that's
in
the
the real
point.
world,
But
And that's
in
the
the
point.
real world,
in both.
In both.
They are you serious?
So-
They make
Well, that's true, at
contact
the very
later
end.
on in this
They-
movie, and they full on Jedi push everybody away from them.
Yes,
It's
but they
ridiculous.
made contact differently. They made contact willingly to make a connection,
The-
as opposed to I'm holding your hand. They're like, wait, I'm touching your hand. Oh, this is interesting. No, I don't think Jude was totally behind the whole thing.
I don't think so.
As well, and
I think if
well,
Jude,
Bugs even tells him that he is.
that's later on.
he's not your friend.
when he's on.
Yeah,
right, but Bugs
that's
tells
later
him that
on.
Jude is.
But initially, if what the two of you are saying is true, I still stand by. There's no way that he would introduce them. He would not initiate that encounter between the two of them if he was.
What's the best way of disguising the truth, though? It's putting it in plain sight.
Right.
I don't know.
You're hiding it right under his nose.
I'm
Showing
gonna
it
have
to
to.
him.
I'm gonna have to agree with Chuck here.
This
Like,
movie is not that deep. This is not the original Matrix movie where we have to analyze every scene that we see and try to decipher what it means. This movie is a lot more on the nose than that, and it's purposely done that way.
I think they gave a lot that's on the nose while still burying some stuff in there to make you think.
I don't. I just don't. I don't see it that way. I think maybe is Jude a program to handle Neo to a certain extent? Absolutely.
Yes.
Yes.
Does he know everything? Is he privy to all of this information that the analyst is up
No.
to? I don't believe
No.
that's the case at all. So
Neither do I.
As I was saying, this Chad character, I was surprised when I was actually looking people up. This is the guy who did the majority of Keanu Reeves' stunt work in The Matrix.
Really?
Yeah, which I thought was really interesting. Like, they are going that meta with it.
Chad guy who? Oh, that guy. Oh,
Tiffany's husband.
Tiffany's husband.
Tiffany's
Okay,
husband.
yep.
But you can call me Tiff.
Anyways, so like I was saying, they meet, they shake hands, there's an instant connection, but then it's interrupted by her husband, and he basically pulls her away. Now, if you want
Actually it's interrupted by her son.
Yeah.
And the question he
ask
asked-
if he's trying
yeah,
to
yeah.
basically, are you trying to get with my
you
mom?
trying to get with my mom?
Yeah.
No, but then her husband walks in, honey, we gotta go. Like, he pulls the whole. Come on.
He pulls
Stop-
the whole
Stop!
right.
Stop talking to this guy. I'm jealous. Let's get out of here. Like, he does the
he
whole
is
thing.
he is also like Truman's wife on Truman Show.
He's a handler. I would agree with that.
He's in on it too.
Yeah.
Because every
Yeah.
time she's doing something, he shows up.
I don't know. I guess my hang up on like the term handler and whether they know what they're doing or not is solely based on the fact that they are programs doing what they are programmed to do. So just because you have a program doesn't necessarily mean that it knows everything that's going on within the system.
No. But it's
No.
like the analyst knows everything that's happening.
The
and
analyst knows everything. Fine.
But in the Truman Show, the director knew everything that was happening and telling them what to do.
But everybody,
same thing.
But everybody
Go
in the
get
town,
like he
but
told his best friend in Truman.
everybody in the town was in on it. Like, everybody in the town knew what was up. They all knew that they were on camera. They all knew that it was a television show.
Yeah.
Everybody was in on it. Here, I don't think you can say that because they're programs.
No, but with the snap of his fingers, they go into swarm mode. So it's like he had them all under control one way or another.
You're just hacking the programs or bending them to your will. If you mean,
Yeah, but my point is he was overseeing the whole thing and basically could make anybody who needed to be a part of the whole thing.
Just
So-
like in Truman Show, the director, when he's at the beach and he made his friend bring him, he's like, stop him from going. He goes there with some beer,
Yep,
at
always
the
beer.
beach, and that wasn't his choice. That was the director telling him to go and do that.
fine, but again, I mean, I find it really difficult to grasp onto because Jew did not try to stop anything. He initiated their interaction.
Again, you hide the truth by putting it right out in front of you.
Fine. I don't see it, but you two clearly do, so I'll
do.
back off on that one. Anyways, we go back to the office where Neo is summoned to his boss's office, and he gives the oblivious line that comes out of the first game, and his boss is all smitten about that. You wrote that one for the first game, and blah blah blah. And they have a sit down, and they're talking about how Warner Brothers wants a fourth Matrix, and they're going to do it with or without us. That's probably my favorite line in this movie because it justifies this movie's existence for me. Like, I have a feeling like Lana Wachowski knew that people like us were going to be talking about this, knew that there were going to be fans who were going to just point at this and say no, and this line was put in there as both an apology to fans of the franchise, an explanation to fans of the franchise, and at the same time kind of sticking it to Warner Brothers for forcing this thing to happen. And it comes up a couple of other times later on in the movie. Well, actually, almost immediately. So during their face-to-face, Neo starts to hallucinate that his boss's or Smith's mouth is being like glued shut, like his own mouth
It was pretty cool.
in the first Matrix movie. It was a nice little callback. I will say that. The callbacks in this movie, they make sense. It's not like other things. It's not like The Force Awakens, where all of the callbacks were so forced and it was so blatantly just trying to be New Hope all over again. Here,
Right.
the callbacks and the nostalgia, it actually makes sense. And I do appreciate that.
And I like when he goes into his office, his boss's office, well, Smith's office, and you hear Smith saying, the exact lines
Yes.
that and he says it in the same,
I didn't
tone.
write it down. I didn't write around word for word, but it was basically the same line when they're looking out the window, they're in the skyrise, they're looking out the window, millions of people living their lives oblivious. Like, it was
It's the
copy and paste.
conversation that he's having with Morpheus.
Yes.
Right. But then it also alluded to him going into his boss's office.
Yes.
Do I make myself clear?
Yeah.
Yes, sir. Crystal clear.
Yes.
That original conversation that Tom Anderson has with his boss before he becomes Neo.
Right.
So they kind of took both of those conversations and put it into one in this, and I appreciated both. They kind of killed two birds with one stone in that, and I like.
I agree with that for the most part. I agree with that. We then cut to Neo, and he is sitting down with his therapist, who is Neil Patrick Harris, who is wearing these ridiculous blue glasses.
I love it. All the glasses in this movie were ridiculous.
They were.
For the most part.
But these ones, especially, like, just like these ridiculously, like, bright blue in-your-face frames. It is fantastic to look at. Neil Patrick Harris in this movie, I actually really liked. And I'm not the biggest fan of Neil Patrick Harris. I always think he's a little bit over the top. He's very hit or miss for me. But here, I actually really
Harold
enjoyed
and Kumar ruined him for me.
Really? That was your breaking point?
Well, I mean, before that, I didn't really know him in much except
he was Doogie.
Doogie Howser.
Doogie Howser.
Yeah.
That's kind of what I'm talking about. Like, I hated that
Harold
show.
and Kumar was his comeback, and then he's just like, hey, I'm going to do things again now that I've got this, like, weird fame.
Well, there was the, what's the other TV show he did with,
How I Met Your Mother.
How I Met Your Mother, yeah.
Yeah.
Which was after Harold and Kumar, though.
Right. But Harold and Kumar, he was just a giant pervert in that movie. I couldn't do it. I didn't like it at all. But that's just me.
So during this therapy session, they're having a talk about how Neo feels and what he actually thinks is going on, and Neo responds with, well, either I'm having a mental break again, or I'm living inside a simulated reality that's trying to imprison me again. And it's just, okay, great. That's what that was the first point in this movie where I said, oh, this is going to be fantastic if this is the road that it goes down. And let me break down what I mean. If this movie's intention up until this point was to lead me to believe that the original trilogy was just going to end up being, hey, Neo may or may not be somebody that's, hanging out in a padded room right now, and the events of the original trilogy just played out in his head, I would have been all over that. This movie would have been fantastic if this was the road that it actually went down. I think that's brilliant. It would have breathed new life into what this franchise could have been, or what this new movie or trilogy that they may or may not end up doing could have been. I thought that would have been really cool. That's just me.
You realize that they set this up for, there's one
I know.
line, I forget what they said.
I know.
They set this up for another whole trilogy.
I know they are.
Because in that conversation with when they're actually in that room with the group of people, they're like, yeah, we can, we have more to do than just this one. And many more, or something like that. But they set this up for another trilogy.
So yeah, it was. I'm not excited about that at all.
Can you handle two more of these?
No, I can't. Especially the way that this movie leaves off. Like, what are they gonna do? Where are they gonna go? Like, I swear to God, if we get one of these sequels and the sky is literally rainbows, I'll throw something at a screen. Like, that would be the dumbest idea in the world.
I mean, but the thing is, if they make a sequel and they don't do it, then people are going to be very upset.
I don't think they would be.
I think so, because she's like, that's a good idea. The rainbow things, that's a great idea. Like,
I think you would be upset. Like, the movie told me that they were going to have skies as rainbows, and there's no rainbows. It lied to me.
It lied to me.
Why am I even here tonight?
Anyways, so we find out.
I've said 5 things.
Really, you don't have a lot of thoughts about this movie, do you?
You guys are just. It's more fun to watch the two of you, because I'm kind of like, I'd say I'm on the fence, closer to Will's side, but I'm just like, it could have been a lot worse than it was.
I'll agree with that. It could have been a lot worse. That's what I'm saying too. Is I think
like we talked about before, if they use different characters, like they said, like we talked about earlier, and they kept the same names, Neo, Trinity, Morpheus, but used different people to fill that because it's a different ideation or rendition of the Matrix, that would have made it better.
Agreed.
Even if they kept the story the same as it is now, it still would have been better because now you have somebody else who is very different, remembering this past life as somebody else, going, why am I remembering this when it's not even me? But it was still the one. He's just remembering his life as the one prior to. So that's why I say I still appreciate it for what they did, and they were just trying to use names. I think they tried to use Keanu Reeves and Carrie-Anne Moss as, like they did for Superman 1 when they brought in Marlon Brando. They did that specifically for, advertising sake. That was it. That was it. So they're using those two to build it up.
It could have been a lot worse. Neo could have been a green bagel.
No.
Yes.
He could have been a bagel.
Do you know that
this
story?
Isn't Loki.
No, do you know that story?
Yeah,
No.
the green bagel.
You don't know that.
Tell him about the green bagel.
So
No, I don't.
So when Brando was approached to be in Superman 2, the budget wasn't really all the way there, or Brando's asking was just so ridiculous that who were the production team that was behind those movies? Oh my God,
Salkind?
Yeah, the Salkind brothers.
Yeah.
They basically did not want to give Brando everything that he was asking for. He was basically asking for the highest budget. He wanted to be paid more than Christopher Reeves. He wanted a certain percentage of the box office. He wanted his royalties to be through the roof. Like, it was absolutely ridiculous. And when the Salkinds declined all this, Marlon Brando was like, well, if you really want me in the movie, just bring me back as a green bagel.
Yep.
That's a true story.
Yep.
This happened. I just think that's funny. Anyways, back to the movie. After Neo's therapy session, he gets back home and we find out that he's being prescribed some medication and it's just a bottle of blue pills. He is blue pilled up to the nines. And it makes perfect sense for why he's questioning everything right now if he's confused. Again, I'm going to say it. If this movie was just painting Neo out to be a mental patient, I think that would have been more interesting than what this movie actually ended up turning into. So it's being very self-aware with itself, which I'm gonna sound like a broken record. I really do appreciate. We cut back into the office where they're discussing the game plan for what the Matrix 4 is going to be. What is this woman's name again, Lee? I'm sorry.
For which?
Where they go back into the office and there's the woman with the plan to. This is what Matrix 4.
Christina Ricci?
Yes, Christina Ricci. She's there, and her eyes.
Is that who that was?
Yeah, for literally, she's there for like 4 seconds.
But it's
maybe.
ridiculous because her eyes are so buggy. It instantly reminds. I don't know if you know it, Chuck, but it instantly.
Her eyes are always buggy in every movie she plays.
Okay,
Yeah.
then never mind. It instantly reminded of the Black Hole Sun video by Soundgarden, where everybody's lips and eyes get really, really wide, and it's ridiculous. Like, it's so over the top. That's what this reminded me of. Like, her eyes just got bigger and bigger and bigger as her, like, on-screen continued. I thought it was really, well, that's weird.
Like the pitch meetings, like the beginning of every pitch meeting.
Yeah, pretty much.
We then get a
Pretty
montage over the track White Rabbit. So, and it's basically people just saying the same things over and over and over again. What is the Matrix? Matrix is something to F with your head. And people, want to be typed into their synaptic nerves and they want that what the H moment all the time. And it's so over the top the way that they're just repeating themselves. We get this really awkward scene with Neo who's on an elevator and it's just people in cell phone culture and Neo's the only one who isn't on a cell phone. Really, really on the nose with that one. Okay. And then we just get a bunch of people. Okay. This is a pet peeve I have with film in general, is this scene right here, where you have a bunch of suits who work in an office for a multi-billion-dollar company who are discussing why an original idea sells. And they're trying to recapture that magic, almost like they're trying to recapture lightning in a bottle. I think it's absolutely ridiculous that any suit working for an office would think this way, but we know that they do. It's the reason why Memento is going to be rebooted. It's absolutely ridiculous that people think like this.
Is that a real thing?
Lee?
Is what a real thing? I'm reading something else here, but what's that?
Is Memento really being rebooted?
Yes.
No.
Yes,
No.
yes, it is. It's being remade. Yes.
No way.
What?
Okay.
Why?
What do you mean, why?
He already did it by making his full movie, which was Tenet.
It's not going to be Christopher Nolan.
Yeah, well, then they should leave it alone. Get out of there. Don't touch
that's
that.
where we're at. That's what they're at. You even have a character in the scene who goes, this can't just be a rehash, reboot piece of garbage. And then somebody chimes in, why not? Reboots sell. Like, it's really hammering this message of reboots and remakes and this type of movie culture home.
I get that, but we're not going to see Memento. Memento's not happening. Why? Why?
Because
that's like
it's because and it's gonna sell. It's gonna do really good. It'll.
In all honesty, really horrible?
In all honesty,
Total Recall was garbage.
Yeah, I know it
Total
was.
Recall was a horrible remake.
The truth is that whatever this new version of Memento is going to be, I guarantee you, it makes more than the original did.
This is what I just looked this up. It says the remake of Christopher Nolan's Memento is still happening, but its producer insists it's not really a remake, just something similar.
Great wording.
Yeah. Okay. That's ridiculous. That's ridiculous.
Yeah. I love when that happens. It's like it's not the same thing. I just call it Windows.
Sure.
Oh, jeez.
Anyways, we then get something really interesting. We get a nice sit down in a coffee shop between Mr. Anderson and Tiff. Are you happy with that one? They sit down, they have coffee together, they're having a general conversation about life and Thomas as a video game developer. And this is when Tiff goes into the whole thing about the characters in his video game and how that Trinity character looks a lot like her, and how I told my husband about this and he laughed at me.
Because he doesn't see her.
No, he doesn't see that at all. He sees her as a blonde.
No, exactly.
Right.
And she wanted to kick his jaw or kick him in the face so hard that maybe his jaw would just break off.
Well,
which I like that we get to see her kick somebody like that later on.
Yeah,
it's a nice
cool.
little throwback to it.
Kind of cool. We're back at Thomas's office, and it's being evacuated for reasons. Maybe I love how they have like online culture references in here. How some nerd in his basement's probably having us swatted. It was really funny to hear something like that. Neo gets a text message to tell him to go to the end of the hall, or the room at the end of the hall, if he wants answers. And it's Morpheus who's in the bathroom. And again, we get red pill, blue pill time, and Neo freaks out. This can't be real. You can't be real. I programmed you. This isn't really happening. And then we get the big shootout. We get the first big shootout of the film. I am going to.
And did you see where Morpheus's guns come from?
I must have missed it. From behind him?
Yeah, I was trying to figure that out too.
He pulls them out of nowhere. They just appear.
They just appear?
I'm actually just reading about that right now. So
he just jumps and pulls out.
They actually just appear out of nowhere.
They just appear.
In the toilet stall where Morpheus suddenly gets an SMG and a pistol.
Suddenly.
In the time of one frame, they suddenly appear in his hands where there is nothing to suggest he's concealed carry with a shoulder holster.
So, especially with that suit. There's no way he was concealing anything with that suit.
I mean,
he couldn't conceal a knife with that suit.
All right, fine. You know what? I'm gonna throw some things back at the two of you. If you think this movie's throwing little deep, subtle things in there, then why not think of it like this? If Morpheus now is all program and no longer man, and we already established that they really don't need phones to enter or exit the Matrix anymore, why not just have, magic guns appear out of nowhere?
Well, that's the whole point of the Matrix at this point. I mean, they're basically at this point, they're basically just Green Lantern. They can just make whatever they want with just like their thoughts. Here it is.
Well, he's the the programs can.
The programs can. That's what I'm getting at.
And Neo should be able to as well.
Neo's not a program.
But Neo's not a program.
But I'm just saying Neo should be able to as well because he can control the Matrix. or should be able to, or
he can control
had.
what's already
I
there.
think he can control.
can't
I think
create-
that was always the idea that he can control what's already there. If you're introducing,
Right.
the
then
idea,
then the gun is a block away. He can just make that gun suddenly not be a block away, but in his hand. Just saying,
I don't know if that makes
right?
sense.
He can use the Force.
He can use the
he
Force.
does use the Force in this.
Yes.
Another
yes.
reason why this is basically Rise of Skywalker, because he spends the entire time using the Force.
He's basically a shield. He's a shield. He's a walking shield.
And I mean, well,
Well,
why
he
don't
does
you
that in
continue?
other movies too.
Continue with where you're at, and we will discuss more.
Right. So we have this giant shootout, and then his boss comes out of the office, shocked. Oh my God! Like he's absolutely stunned by what's going on. Just the utter chaos. And when I say chaos, I do mean chaos. I mean the fire alarms are going off. The sprinkler system is going nuts. There's cops and agents running around everywhere. Morpheus is fighting everybody off solo style. This is pretty fantastic to look at, with one exception. And I'll say this now, that way I don't have to say it later on in the movie or in the review. The choreography in this movie is lacking. It does not deserve the title of Matrix. That's kind of one of the things that I was alluding to earlier when I asked you that question. Go ahead.
This is what we're going to come down to. So the reality about this whole movie, I mean, I know I'm jumping ahead really.
Go for it.
We haven't really seen Neo like fight anybody, because at this point he's still like shaking in his pants and like grabbing his jeans.
Confused.
Yeah.
He doesn't know what's going on.
Am I crazy? Is this really happening? But the thing is, he must have just really been so busy that he didn't have the time to do any choreography with them. So they're like, let's just make him force push people. Now, I might be stealing that from something that Chuck and I both watched, but it's a reality here where it's like you hardly see him really do much fighting with people. He just kind of pushes them. He spends the entire third act of the riding on a motorcycle, force pushing people away from him. That is the ending of the movie there.
He force guides a missile.
Yeah, there's that too. Yep. But listen, he used to like stop bullets and then they'd fall down. Okay, that's cool. He put up his hand or whatever and stopped a sentinel coming after them in the real world. That's a little crazy.
One of the major selling points of the original trilogy is the choreography. It's the fights. It's the martial arts of the entire thing. That's one of the major selling points of the original trilogy. This movie has none of that.
And you would think after John Wick 2, 3, like, oh great, well that's why they brought Keanu back. No. They're just gonna right.
You would think,
but in this case, but the whole point though, the reason. The way I look at it is
he knows kung fu because of his Oculus Quest. That's why.
Yes. No, he didn't do as much. He couldn't even fly. But
he
the
almost
thing is,
did. He almost
he
did.
didn't.
He's like,
he made the ground ripple.
Not gonna happen.
He made the ground ripple.
But the way I took this was, he was the other half, and now all that stuff that he could do in the first one, now Trinity does.
Yeah,
so they're now he is one half of the coin versus the whole. She is the other side of it now. That's just how I took it. That's why when they come back at the end, she does all the fighting and all the moves.
If the whole thing is that Neo's powers are limited because he isn't emotionally connected to Trinity, I'd swallow that. That has nothing to do with the choreography in this film.
Right.
No, I agree. But I'm saying the whole reason why he's just doing the force pushing and why
we'll get to the force pushing. Like I'm
is because it's not full. The other half isn't there. That's why I took that. The way I took that one.
But the force push is a pretty good power to have.
It's one that he didn't have before. He did not have that in the original trilogy. He was just stopping bullets.
Neither did Trinity.
No, nobody was force pushing anything.
Where did this come from and
this
why?
Never happened.
Besides the fact that they're like, let's just have him do this instead.
You know what?
Well,
I'm just going to say it.
It goes back to the second movie though. But in the second movie though, when he's with the Frenchman and he shoots him and he stops all the bullets for the first time.
Yeah.
He goes impressive. He was doing things in that rendition of the Matrix that his predecessors did not do.
Fine.
So in this rendition, he's now doing more that the past renditions of him could not do.
Okay, sure.
Or less.
That's how I look at it.
Or less is right. I'm just gonna be really honest and say that he's 20 years older. Like, that's the easiest explanation that I can come up with of why he's
In
not
real
going,
life, that's why they did it
of why
that way,
he's not
yes.
going up.
Well,
Okay,
yes.
listen,
Right.
full respect to Keanu Reeves for learning martial arts and taking it seriously and taking stunt work seriously with the last 20 years of his career. Nothing but respect for him for doing that. However, he's 20 years older, and in a movie or a franchise where a key component is martial arts, maybe this is where you get a stunt double so it doesn't look so stunted. Pardon the pun.
I think he did have a stunt double a few times
In this movie?
Okay,
when he's going through a wall, perfectly understandable. If he's going through a wall or concrete or something like that, or there's this giant bump that Neo has to take, stunt double there, perfectly fine. But the martial arts,
Yeah, I agree. I think
there's no reason why Keanu Reeves had to do the martial arts in this movie if he did. Like, you can, I think that's the kind of thing that you can get a stunt double for, so that it's at least on par with what we're.
I agree with that part. I can get on board with that part. I
Yeah.
do appreciate still just looking at though, even his fight with Morpheus. You know, I think him even
We'll get
stepping
there,
up
too.
and doing what he did at almost 60 years old was still impressive.
We'll get there. Anyways, that's what I said. So the shootout's going on and everything else, and his boss comes out of his office, shocked and amazed by what's going on, and almost a little bit scared. And then he looks down, he sees a gun, picks it up, does a little neck crack thingy that's so cliche for villains to do when they reveal themselves in any other action film that we've seen, and just screams out, "Mr. Anderson." And I thought it was ridiculous. I'm sorry. I thought that him screaming Mr. Anderson like that,
Mr. Anderson.
that is not that is not something Hugo Weaving would have done.
No.
Never in a million years would he go off the rails like that. Okay, sure.
Nope.
I don't buy it from the character of Smith. And the reason why I have such a hard time with that is because there are parts of this movie and parts of this guy's performance that I really did like. I'm like, ooh, he's doing a good job kind of playing Smith and slipping
like
into
when you first meet him.
And slipping into a little bit of Hugo Weaving. And then something like this happens, and it's like Mr. Anderson, like at the top of his lungs. And then he's just a cool dude through the rest of the film, and it's like, that's okay. You were doing a better job when you didn't know who you were. But that's just me. So, all of this chaos is going on, and for some reason, everything just ends. Right as Smith is about to shoot Neo in the head, everything ends, and Neo is back in his therapist's office. And they're having a discussion about what just happened, and how it didn't actually happen, and how he's making everything up in his mind. We find out that Neo, he's a suicide attempt survivor. He attempted suicide by way of attempting to fly off of a building, which I'm going to get into a little bit later, and he survived, and his session is over. We then see Neo on top of a roof, and he's drinking. He's really working on that bottle, and he decides to take a leap off of this roof, but then he's stopped abruptly by the Bugs character that we met from earlier. Okay, I'm gonna keep going then.
Well, she grabs him as he's about to walk off.
You know that him ending up in the therapist's office is just a throwback to him waking up in bed in the first movie.
I understand that. I understand that. However, the thing here is we were about to see him get shot, and then all of a sudden everything ended. So either there was something.
The same thing too is he got the thing in his stomach in the first one. All of a sudden everything ended. He got arrested and his mouth got closed up, and then it all of a sudden ended.
Right.
And he ended up in bed like it was a dream. So this is just this instead of it being a dream, it's now just a psychotic episode.
So you thought this was a psychotic break?
No, instead of it in the first movie, what really happened was played off to him as if it was just a dream. Like when he had his mouth close up, he woke up and his mouth was, or when they had the thing, the bug go in his stomach, he thought it was all just a dream. And every time he woke up abruptly.
I'm on board with all of that. I'm on board with it.
And then this one,
the fact that
when he ends up at the therapist's office, he's his therapist, the analyst, is telling him it's basically a psychotic break.
I think this movie
So
would have been
he's
much
thinking
better
it-
if this actually was a psychotic break. Because I'm still thinking he's having a psychotic break.
Right, but that's what they were leading. They were making him think it was a psychotic break, when in reality it did actually happen.
No,
Like the whole bug thing. He's like, that thing was real. Like that fight actually happened.
I know what actually happened.
Same thing.
I know what actually happened. I just think it would have been a lot more interesting if it actually was a psychotic break. But that's just me. I know I'm probably alone in that one. Anyways, Bugs grabs him off the ledge, won't really let him jump, and basically says, "You're gonna have to come with me if you want any answers," and then shows him a tattoo of a white rabbit on her arm. Goes over, opens the door, giant door of light, just like out of Reloaded, and they walk through, and it's basically we're back into the first movie. We're in a room, the movie is playing on like a projector style thing going on.
Nope.
Go ahead.
Nope. We're in a train. They go into
I'm-
a train
I'm-
in Tokyo.
If you haven't noticed, I'm skipping over a lot of things just for time's sake, because okay, what actually happens on the train? They walk through a couple of cars on the train and they end up in the room where the movie is playing on the projector.
Well, did you notice on the train they were all wearing face masks, and half of them were wearing masks that had the Matrix code on it?
Yeah.
Oh, were they really?
Yeah.
I didn't notice that. Okay, cool.
Because I was talking to Luke about this too, and it was like, they were just showing it like, oh, it's this popular game, so everyone's like, when we were all wearing masks during the pandemic, we're buying masks that to things that we thought were cool.
Right.
They were buying Matrix masks that they thought were cool, and they were in Tokyo, and that was the whole thing, like in Reloaded, where he ends up in the mountains. They're opening a door up in the mountains. When they're in the what's his name?
Yeah, it was a throwback. I understand that it was a throwback.
And then they go through another portal into the same room. And I appreciated this part. This whole next scene, I loved it.
how
they did it.
I like the way that our new Morpheus character was actually acting throughout this entire thing, because he's basically going back and forth between lines from the first movie, but it's like choice this, etc., etc. Red pill,
Yada,
blue
yada,
pill,
yada.
blah blah blah. And we find out that it's actually hasn't been 20 years since everything went down. It's been 60. And then Neo basically takes the red pill and we're off to the races with that one. For some reason, the therapist can see him through a mirror. He's not very happy about everything that's going on. You can see it all over Neil Patrick Harris's face, that things are about to abruptly end for him. Like, this is going to be his undoing. He tries to pull him through the mirror, like back onto his side. I really didn't understand what was going on with that. This
is the same thing of when in the first movie, when he touches the mirror,
right,
and all that. It's the
same thing.
It's
the same thing.
Same
but
thing.
only this time there's actually a program on the other side of said mirror that's trying to pull him back to reality, the fake world,
to the Matrix, right?
That whole thing that's going on. And then we are introduced to what is swarm mode. And swarm mode is basically when regular people are possessed by the Matrix itself or by the program, and they basically turn into zombies and they swarm whatever it is that they're programmed to attack, which I thought was a pretty cool concept. I thought that was great. We get an explanation.
They all have green blood.
Yeah. But here's the interesting thing, okay? So why would this program that is like working for the machines, right?
Mm-hmm.
Why would he decide, these programs we created, the agents, they weren't efficient enough. So we're going to take our batteries and just kill them. They are wasting so much of their power source, so much of their copper tops, as they mostly call them, by later on we see them die.
That question.
Yeah, we get an answer to that later. I don't necessarily think that they're using pod people to power themselves anymore. I think that was resolved in Revolutions.
Ooh.
No, they're still using people in the pod.
That's not the explanation in this movie. The explanation in this
they're
movie
still
for where
using
they're
people in the pod.
The explanation in this movie for where they're getting their power from is different than pod people.
It's true. They're still using the people in the. That's why they still have the fields of people in the pods.
Right.
Sure.
But what he found a more efficient way to generate more power. out of
Yes.
the people.
That's
Right.
what I mean. So like, okay, fine. Even I'll walk that one back. If they're still using pod people, fine. But I think the explanation for where they get the majority of their power from means that there are certain people or people in general are a little bit more expendable than they normally would be.
Right.
Yeah, that's basically what they're at right now. It's just it was funny to me because there's a part in this movie where they lose like thousands of people. And I'm like, that's a lot of power you're just like getting rid of.
Yeah, sure. I mean, we'll get into it. I do like there's this one scene on this train during this fight where they're doing the whole swarm thing and they're fighting and this woman just goes flying out of a window and she just screams and it's just like ah, and she's just gone.
Oh, when she gets thrown and she
Yes.
just kind of like flies away. Yeah,
I thought that was actually
there was
pretty
that,
funny.
or the little girl with the sharp candy apple stick.
Yeah. Okay.
Okay.
Anyways, so she goes flying. So this random woman goes flying out the window, and then we're in a bathroom with a very small mirror, and that is the exit. And Neo goes through it, and we're back in the real world. At first, I will say this. At first, I liked that they made it very minimal. They only showed 2 pods. They didn't do a whole bunch of background stuff. They didn't show like Machine City all over again because we've already seen it. They made it very minimal, probably because they know.
Yep.
They know that people like us would have probably complained, like, this doesn't look like the original, or this is a little bit too advanced. This doesn't look
Right,
as well
right.
as the original. Like, I think they were just trying to get rid of that kind of conversation altogether. So this here,
Yeah.
I really liked. It's very minimal. There's 2 pods and a couple of machines that come out of nowhere to unjack Neo and basically fly him away.
Now, what
And
do you
he
think?
has double the jacks in his body now.
Yeah,
He
and
has double the
weird
jacks,
thing around
but he
his
also
neck.
has a lot more. He also has a lot more hair. He had eyebrows and actual hair, as opposed to when he first woke up, when we saw in the other Matrix, the original Matrix, when he had nothing. It was like completely shaved,
Yeah.
no eyebrows, nothing. Here he wakes up and he's like, he's just got short hair, like he took, a beard trimmer and just kind of like went through it quick.
Sure. Yeah.
So that was a little bit odd, but whatever.
Yeah, but only him and Trinity had that second adapter on the back of their neck, though.
Right, and that's
Yeah.
because they were later. We
Special.
find out that they were recreated.
Yeah.
They were
Right.
Yeah.
resurrected.
That was my first thought there. Like, they have a really weird thing going on the back of their neck. Oh, okay, this is why. And then you get a lot of
And,
answers
and we
to that
had
later.
this conversation with the first movie when we talked about with the first time they were like all those jacks were like ripped out of his body, and Lee was like they kind of just fell out.
Mm-hmm.
The first movie it looked like they were all ripped out. In this movie, they just fell out.
They just fell out here. Yeah.
So, I thought it was like, oh, that was for Lee. That's when they just
it's
fell
kind
out.
of what it's kind of what I thought. That I'm like, I bet Lee will be very happy when he sees that. They all just kind of they all just kind of fall out. Anyways, yeah, I thought it was really cool. I like that Neo still went through a lot of anguish when everything was coming out of him, especially the big one in the back of his neck. Like, it looked like it really hurt him, and he really was able to capture that moment.
Yeah,
all
but
over
he
again.
he didn't
Go
do
limp.
a dead man drop.
Yeah, he didn't go
Yeah.
limp. He didn't go limp this time around because he was expecting it. So I like
Yeah.
that too. Like the little subtle things that they threw in this movie with little things like that, I really enjoyed.
Yeah.
Anyways, so where are we? Okay, so yeah, we're in the real world. Neo basically gets a ride back to the ship by something. I don't even know what to begin to call this. I just want to call it a giant bug.
Was it Sabebe?
Sabebe? That's the
Sabebe.
name of it, but it's like, what is it? I don't know.
Not
I'm
to be
just gonna
confused
call
with
it a,
not to be confused with Sabebe's kids.
right.
It's a sentient. Is it a sentient?
It's a sentient, yes.
A
sentient,
sentient.
Yeah.
Sentient.
Sentient.
Sure. We get a
Sentient.
huge definition of sentience later on in the movie that we're going to get into. Okay, so Neo is back on the ship with the rest of this crew, and he does not even an introduction. He's basically catatonic by the time they
there was
get
a
there.
very subtle thing. There was a very subtle thing that happened too here is when he's flying over the second pod. We all know that
Yes.
it's Trinity in the pod.
Yeah.
You see her hand coming
Okay,
out of it.
how?
It was actually pretty
How
cool.
did she move? How? How did she slightly
because
open
of their,
her? Hang on.
because of their force connection.
She slightly opens her eyes and like lifts a hand through like the gel. Like, it's so weird to look at. Like, how is this happening? Like, okay,
It's like things in a dream. Like you're in a dream state.
No, I don't buy this. I don't buy this. What happened here completely negates the entire concept behind jacking in for me. I'm sorry, it does. It does. This.
You don't think
they
you
were,
open
they
your?
were just
You don't.
trying.
Have you
they were
seen
just trying to
people
show
who
the
sleep with their
connection.
eyes open?
Stop.
Have you seen people who sleep with their eyes open?
Stop trying to justify this.
What?
I don't care. This
The stuff that we do while we're sleeping, you don't
I'm just
even
gonna
know.
use. I'm just gonna use Lee's line. I don't care. I'm just arguing just to argue it.
No, but it's seriously though. Please, like this, like the whole concept behind what
honestly,
it is to jack in. Like we spent an hour or more in the original film, like going through jacking in and the benefits and ramifications of, and now all of a sudden here it's like, I'm in a pod, I'm jacked into the Matrix, but I'm gonna wake up and I'm gonna see you and I'm gonna lift a No.
She didn't wake up and see him.
She opened her eyes and reached out for him.
That means nothing. That is a physical response. That's not a conscious response in that world.
She opened her eyes, saw him, and reached out for him.
No, you're seeing it wrong. It happened. Opened her eyes and reached up. Yes. But I mean, there'd be a whole different thing if she opened her eyes and jumped out of it.
She wasn't conscious in doing it.
Yes, she wasn't consciously doing that. That was just something that her body was doing because of their connection.
You know what? This is a hill that I will gladly die on alone if I have to. I don't care. This was
okay. Well, that's fine. Whatever.
This was.
It was just further proving their ridiculous connection, their force dyad. I'm gonna use every single Star Wars reference for this because this is such a Star Wars ripoff.
In the original, Neo wasn't allowed to die because Trinity loved him. In Reloaded,
you can't die because I love you.
In Reloaded, Trinity wasn't allowed to die because Neo loved her. And then in Revolutions, they both died. And here it's.
But they still loved each other.
And here it's, oh, you're jacked in. You still have to look at me because we love each other. What the? What? What? Come on. This is where this movie loses it for me because from this point out, it basically becomes a love story. The motivations for all of the characters.
Of the Matrix is a love story.
No, it's not.
Yeah.
No, it's not.
Yes, it is.
Stop. No, it's not.
Yes, it is.
So let's go. Let me just
the
say.
Original. Hang on. Let me finish this. The original trilogy, the love story was the B plot, even the C plot. If you want to say that, I'll agree with you 100%. From this point on, the motivations of every character in this movie is we have to get the two of them back together.
Yeah. Why?
Exactly.
This whole movie has no purpose.
No.
There are no high
After this
stakes.
point-
Everybody's living happily eating strawberries and blueberries with the synthesoids or whatever.
Exactly. What Lee just said. Everybody's
This whole
happy.
thing is just-
Everybody's happy
it's
eating
nostalgia.
strawberries. Everybody's happy eating strawberries. We have to risk everything to make sure that Neo and Trinity can live a happy life together. That's what this movie turns into from this point on.
I know, because
this is where I have
God
a problem.
forbid she goes back and takes her kids to soccer practice.
Oh my god. I'm sorry. This is and Chuck, dude.
That's my whole problem. My whole issue with this movie is the stakes. The stakes were not high
I was
for
wondering.
anything. Like they didn't need him for anything.
So for the past hour or so, I've been wondering, like, wow, Lee's really quiet, and now I know why. This is the point. I really hope this is the point where you turn on.
Because it's because the whole point is like you watch a movie and you're like, here's a clear goal, here's a clear purpose and a clear reason. But this made it the whole movie was just like, but why though? Oh, just to make another movie. No other reason. They were just making another movie. They didn't have a reason for it because guess what? It was funny to me because you could make up any story. The machines changed their mind and they're against us again. No. The machines are good.
The machines are good.
So what's the problem?
The only problem
I don't know.
here, and we're gonna get to it later here. The only problem here is the machines are at war with themselves. What does that have to do with the people in Io? What does that have to do with Neo and Trinity? Nothing. It has nothing to do with them.
It was a bunch of fanboys who just loved Neo and wanted to see him come back. so they can hang out with him. And then he's like, but I want my girlfriend.
Hold
and
on,
they go,
hold on.
Oh,
we're
okay.
Yeah, we're
let's do
getting
that.
there because there's actually, and I know I'm jumping ahead. There's
We're
legit a
jumping way
character
ahead.
on the ship that they call a neologist.
Exactly.
What?
Yes. Yes. He's the crazy
Oh my
Jesus
God.
freak,
Yeah,
Neo
yes,
freak.
Yes,
Yes.
And
Oh
he's
my
not the only
gosh.
one. He's not. There's
I
another
know.
one. There's like a guard who's like tasked with bring Neo to his cell, and he cannot help.
Shepard,
He
yeah.
cannot help but being smitten on this elevator. It's ridiculous.
absolutely.
It's absolutely
I'm
ridiculous. No, don't be sorry.
I'm sorry.
Don't be sorry.
This is my
Don't be sorry, man. Hey,
this is
you
my favorite podcast to date.
you wanted.
I've just been keeping my mouth shut this whole time
And I
because
know-
I'm just like, I just want you to get to a point where I can finally say this movie has no point. It goes nowhere. There's no purpose for it.
You know what?
It's just to make another movie.
I'm Lee. I am 100%
It's like a horror
on board
movie.
with you. I'm 100%
You know what?
on
I
board
agree
with you. But
I agree with that. I agree that they made this movie just to make a movie, but I still like it.
I'm on board. I'm on board with what Lee is saying. I'm 100% on board with him. But this is a podcast that we do, and I have to go through it the way that I go through every other movie. But I agree 100% with him. The first, that's why I was so disappointed. That's why I was so upset. Like, the first act of this movie, up until this point, is phenomenal. I really enjoyed a lot of the ideas that it was introducing.
see, but
and then it gets here, and it's like, none of that mattered. Is Neo crazy? No. Is Neil Patrick?
No, but see, the thing is, though, is when I understand why they make the movie, like when we talked about Spider-Man, they brought in the other two Spider-Men for fan-sake purposes. And we talked about it and going, yeah, if they didn't do that, that would be half the way. They did it for that reason.
There was
But it
more.
made
But
sense.
it made exactly. It
But-
made sense.
It went somewhere.
They came in
It
for a
made
reason.
sense.
There
Right,
was a,
but
there
this-
was a
but the
there was
whole
a
thing is,
spell,
though-
and Strange made a lot of mistakes, and they had to fix everything. And now
you have to
and the two
realize, though,
Spider-Men
that
were
this is
there as a
just the-
byproduct of that. This is just. Bleh.
You have to realize that there's going to be 2 more movies after this.
yeah.
Yeah. And what are they gonna do?
So-
Please,
What are they gonna
no.
do?
Don't
What
do
what
it.
is what are they gonna do? That's why I asked. Like legit. Like I'm 100% expecting rainbows in the sky. It's gonna happen. Like this was so wow. And again, I do want to say Leonard Wachowski threw that line about Warner Brothers in this movie for a reason, and I appreciate that because it makes it's basically an apology, and I love that. But oh man, this is
You still could have made it better.
See, the thing
Absolutely.
is I agree with everything you guys are saying, but it doesn't take away that I like the
fine.
movie still.
I'm glad that you like the movie. I'm really happy for you that you like this movie, and I'm
That's
excited to
like-
continue this conversation with you, and I'm excited to hear you continue to justify yourself for liking this movie. But this, oh wow, wow. Did you want to add something else, Lee? Or
No.
Yeah, he did. Go ahead and say
No.
it.
you had
Go ahead
something
and
else to
say
say?
it.
You did have
Don't
something.
hold back.
It's just like I'm just thinking like, okay, when we watch movies, when Will and I watch a movie, you know, we'll watch it for a few different reasons. One, we want to watch something dumb and mindless. We want to watch something funny, or we want to watch something that makes us think, right? Like, I mean, those are the 3 things I would watch a movie for.
That last point that you made, however, I know where you're going. I just want to add that last point that you made about making you think. That's not the norm.
Not the norm to what?
That doesn't appeal to mainstream. People
No.
generally want to watch something
No.
stupid and pointless and mindless, and that they can go to the theater with their friends and have a good time and popcorn and the whole thing, and then leave the theater
Right.
and forget about it. Like so, yeah.
Mhm.
You and I will, and Chuck as well. We will watch movies because they make us think. I just want to throw that out there. That's not the norm.
Well, it's not so much make us think, like make us like surprised, or you know, there's a twist there, like oh, but no, we want to watch it because we want to get a story, like I guess not even just think, but we want to be filled, like we want to watch something because we want it to hit all these different parts. Like Forrest Gump, I still have to say it's in my top 10. Because it hits all these different parts. You've got like action, you've got comedy, you've got drama, you know, and it all kind of connects. And you're like, oh, like I'm filled when I watch that movie. I haven't watched it in years. I'd love to watch that movie all the way through again because it's got so much to it. But this is kind of like, you know, think of it this way. You have a nice meal, right? Steak tips, potatoes, think of like a really good meal, nice, full, like filling meal. And then you have cotton candy. This is cotton candy. Like, it's there, and then as soon as it touches your tongue, it just disappears. You get this weird sugar rush, and then next thing you know, the skies are freaking rainbows. All right? That's what this is. Okay? I want a steak dinner when I watch a movie. I don't want cotton candy.
I'm with you. I know where you're coming from. I'm 100% on board with you. Anyways, so we're on the ship, and there's some problems going on with Neo, so the crew gets the bright idea to jack him in to try to jumpstart him a little bit, and he ends up inside of a dojo with who we now know is Morpheus. And
Are we still this far back?
And
Can we just get to the end?
Hang on. And they get into... We're doing this, man. I'm sorry. And they get into a fight. And Morpheus easily handles him throughout almost the entirety of this fight. And
he just sits there and takes it.
He just sits there and takes it. Neo just sits there and takes
everything.
it. Everything. Every punch, every kick. He gets thrown all over the place. He's bleeding everywhere. It's what is going on? He's not even attempting to fight back. And then Morpheus starts bad-talking him. You're going to have to fight for what you want. Fight me if you ever want to see Trinity again. Come on, this is your last chance. You got to wake up. Go on the whole thing. And then Neo becomes a Jedi.
Mm-hmm.
Neo force pushes him away, and the entire dojo that's in the middle of this lake explodes in spectacular fashion. Okay. Neo and Bugs have where are we?
I liked that part.
You like the fight?
I liked the fight.
Okay.
I liked that he was trying to jog Neo's memory, because he was dying in the real world because he was hooked on the blue pill, basically. And he was hooked. Yeah, he's hooked on phonics. And he was hooked on, the stimulant of the Matrix, basically. And he had to fight for his life to fight for Trinity. And he was basically bringing Neo back to his roots of being the one and saying you have to fight. And then you see him, slowly coming into it and then becoming, back to where he was supposed to be. I appreciated that. The effects of how they blew the place up was
pretty cool. I will say that the effects of how they blew this dojo up was pretty cool to see.
So I have to ask one question, just as far as like the stylistic approach they had here with this whole movie. So when I first watched this movie, and I have to admit, I watched the whole thing on my phone. Ew. Like I watched the whole movie on my phone the first time, which was
I could never.
It
watch
was. I mean, I had it up to my face. I had my headphones on.
Oh no,
and I watched
I
the
understand.
Whole thing.
Listen, for some people, watching the movie on the phone, perfectly acceptable. I could never do that. Nope.
Right. Well, it's just because the settings I was in when I was watching it just took me a while. But so the second time I watched it was up on the big screen upstairs in the living room, and as I'm watching it, even my wife, because we watched it last night again, she's like, "This doesn't feel like a Matrix movie." It doesn't. And I'm like,
"It really doesn't."
And I'm wondering why. And I thought about it, and like the frame rate just seemed really fast. It almost reminded me of watching like Doctor Who. Like the newer series of Doctor Who, where it's like it's so fast moving, where it doesn't have that movie feel. It just
remember though, it's a newer, updated rendition of the Matrix. That's why they call the original code. You have old.
I understand that. It just, but it looked so weird, where it's just like, oh, like we felt like we were watching like a B movie, like we felt like we were watching a Sci-Fi Channel movie.
Yes, I will agree.
That's
with that.
how I kind of felt about that. Like right off the bat, we were like 10 minutes in. She goes, "This doesn't seem like the Matrix. It seems like we're watching a TV show."
I think one of the problems, and maybe this is a little bit of an apology for the way that Lee and I are bashing on this. Well, at least from me, I don't know if Lee will agree with this or not. The original movie set the standards so high, and for 20 years later, for a movie of what's supposed to be the same caliber, does not stack up at all. It's disappointing.
Yeah,
I'll say
absolutely.
that.
After 20
I will
years?
say that. After 20 years, if you can't make a movie that's
20 plus.
come on.
Yeah.
Yeah, 20 plus at this point. I think
Mm-hmm.
I do think, and maybe that's unfair. Maybe that's an unfair bias. You know, maybe Chuck got the right idea for walking into this, not really taking that into a whole lot of consideration like you and I would.
Mm.
So I mean,
I take those things into consideration, but I also when I understand the why behind why they did it, at that point I look at it and go, I can appreciate that.
Well, it's because Warner Brothers is going to make it with or without them. That's the why behind why they did it.
But what I'm saying is, I like everything you guys are saying. It's not the same quality. There are I see every bit of that, but it doesn't ruin the movie
so
for me.
it's not the same quality, but it's like from a storytelling perspective, the cinematography, the choreography are all lacking. Severely lacking, especially when you compare it to even Revolutions, man. Like, this is whoa, like, okay, it's jarring. It's I don't know, and like I said, maybe you have the right idea. Maybe I'm too attached to what the original trilogy was able to do. Maybe the original movie is up too high of a pedestal for me to actually like properly enjoy this for what it is. That could be.
Well, it's crazy. I was just looking it up. The first movie is everyone's favorite.
Of course.
The second movie, Reloaded, doubled box office.
Of course it did.
The rest,
of course,
of
it
did. It doubled everything. But do I agree? I agree with everything you guys are saying. I just don't let it ruin the movie for me.
And maybe that's my fault. You know, maybe I'll admit it. Maybe that's my fault.
It's like, I'll go back to it. Everything you guys say about Equilibrium, I agree with. I still love the movie. There is hole after hole after hole after hole of Equilibrium.
There was a difference.
But I still love
there was
the movie.
A difference with Equilibrium. I think Lee and I said in that podcast that we each saw it young, and when we first saw it was amazing, and then you go back to it years later and it's like, this did not age well at all.
Right.
It does not age well at all.
So,
and it was one of Christian Bale's worst movies.
That's the difference here. Like, The Matrix aged well. That's a movie that's never going to go anywhere. So, and it's just, I don't know. But again,
yes, I agree. This one will not age the same as the original.
I don't think it will either.
Not
I
even
don't think
close.
it will either. Anyways,
but I still appreciate it for what it is, though.
So, where are we? Okay. So, Neo, after he basically becomes a Jedi, he's back on the ship and he's having a nice conversation with Bugs about everything that Neo was able to accomplish. That there is peace between humans and the machines, that the war actually did come to an end. The only problem now is that they're at civil war with each other, which we find out later. The meaning of what is our side has changed, and now there are humans and programs that basically work together, and they created what eventually we find out became Io, which I think is great. This part of the movie, like this conversation right here, and what builds up to Io and the explanation of, I think that's fantastic. The fact that Neo and everything that he did, and he did not die in vain, and everything that he wanted to accomplish, he actually accomplished. Like, there is peace, and now there are sentients and machines and people all working together to create kind of like a utopia here in the real world. I think is fantastic. And I also think it's fantastic that later on we find out that Neo gets a lot of recognition for what is actually happening down there. That I think is really cool.
Wasn't Io a name in Ready Player One?
I have no idea.
Isn't it? Like, it's a name of a place, and I'm seeing it in a lot of things now. I think it was Ready Player One. It was Io.
Well, anytime I think
Io in mythology was a daughter of Inachus in Greek mythology.
Sure.
And lover of Zeus, who was turned into a cow.
Sure.
Okay.
So,
did you guys notice that they
It would have
bring
been more apropos
Zion back into this?
Kind of.
they brought what back in?
They brought Zion back
They
into this.
talk
Well,
about
yeah.
Zion.
Yeah, they talk about
Nope, they actually bring it back into it too.
it. To a point, that's what the fight was.
Nope.
Wait,
Modern day,
wait.
they are in Zion.
What fight? What fight are you talking about, Lee?
The fight, the machines were fighting in Zion.
No, not when there was a flashback. Modern day, they go into Zion.
Okay.
So when they
Are
go,
you talking
when
about
they go
Morpheus, the
into,
statue?
nope, that was in IO.
Okay.
That's an
So when they steal after all of this stuff happens, when they meet, when he's reintroduced to Niobe again, and everything happens, and they take back off, and she goes, "Bring us to broadcast depth," and they fly up and they back up into that little cave.
Yeah.
That's Zion.
Really?
You can look back. You can see you can see the walkways that were going across, all falling apart. They're all different little rooms inside of all of those, all destroyed.
Okay.
It's Zion.
Okay. I missed that one. I mean, if it is, that's pretty clever. That's kind of cool, I guess, that they kind of tied that back in a little bit. So, right. Yeah, after their conversation, Neo is back up on the deck. He basically meets the crew, and he doesn't immediately. This is when we meet the guy, I blanked on his name, Lee knows it, who basically, he says he's a neoologist.
Mm-hmm.
What was his name?
I don't recall that character's name.
You said his name.
I have 1,000 questions. So do I.
Okay.
Yeah, I didn't
Anyways,
say his name.
so Neo asks about Trinity, and they basically tell him that, yeah, we can do it, but it's going to be tricky. I don't know why.
Shepard was the other guy. I knew Shepard. I don't remember the other guy. Was it?
The guy on the elevator was Shepard. That's what you said.
Yeah.
Okay.
Right.
Yeah, I don't know this guy's name. Anyways, he asks about Trinity, and they basically tell him that it's going to be tricky. The crew then fly into IO, which, I mean, it's kind of cool the way that they enter. It's just a wall. It reminded me of oh my god, it reminded me of Batman when he drives into the side of the cave, and it's just like a hologram of the side of the cave.
Yep.
I thought that was kind of cool. So they land, and they are immediately confronted by General Niobe. Am I the only one who thought that Jada Pinkett Smith looked ridiculous with all that makeup on?
She did.
And with like the blind eye.
Blind eye, cool. The dreads, I'm all right with. I'm just talking about like the 2 pounds of makeup that she had on her face to make her look like she was in her 90s.
Well, dude, it was 60 years later.
I guess.
So, I mean, yeah.
I guess. I don't know. I just thought.
I think it's just hard for us to think of Jada Pinkett Smith being like 90 years old.
Right.
So.
Do you know who else they introduced into this movie? Or they brought into this movie?
Yes.
The old lady gardener. You know who that is?
Oh.
Yeah, that's the one from Family Matters.
It's Aunt Rachel from Family
Is it
Matters.
really?
Was. Oh, absolutely.
Yes. Oh
She
my
hasn't
God.
changed at all. She didn't change at all.
That's cousin Richie's mother.
Yeah.
Wow.
Little Richie. Yep.
Huh.
Yep.
That's kind of cool.
As soon as I saw her, I was like, her voice sounds identical. She
Yeah.
just looks a
Okay,
little older. But I was like, that's
now
clearly
I can see
her.
it. Now I can see it.
I asked my wife. She goes, I don't remember her. And I'm like, how do you not remember Rachel? Like Aunt Rachel. That's her.
Wow.
Yeah.
I mean, she was in the first few seasons, then she was written on and off out of the rest of the season.
Oh, was
But
she
Richie
really?
was in the whole thing.
Oh, yeah. Interesting.
Anyways, they're confronted by General Niobe, who is not very happy with Captain Bugs at the moment for reasons. And basically tells her to go scrub down her ship and then hand over her tags to whoever. Then takes Neo on a little tour of what is IO, shows him that they can grow strawberries and such, and that they're working with other sentients, and they're really excited for growing blueberries in the future. Neo,
Wait, do you see our blueberries?
Niobe poo-poos all over what Zion was by saying Zion could have never had anything like this. They were stuck in the past and they were stuck in war. And
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Come on, man.
Well, there's a line later
Don't just
on that I think is great.
grunt. Say something.
No. I'm just saying, But Bugs really just calls her out later on when she's like, "Oh, this isn't an argument." She goes, "No, it's not an argument. It's a fact. You care more about growing fruit than freeing minds."
Yes.
And it's a really valid point, and I love that Bugs stood up and just fought against her the whole time. She goes, "This is ridiculous," and I'm
Bugs
actually
Bugs is
okay.
the new Morpheus in this.
That's
though.
kind of what I thought too.
Kinda, yeah.
Bugs is to Morpheus as Niobe is to what's his name?
Well, Bugs is to
Niobe's boyfriend. In the,
I
in the
think you
original.
mean Bugs is to Niobe what Morpheus was to Locke.
No, Bugs is to Morpheus as Niobe is to Locke, because Bugs is butting up against Niobe as Morpheus did to Locke.
Tomato, tomato.
Yeah, I'm honestly not upset that they changed, that they made Niobe's character go this direction.
Okay.
I think it was interesting. I mean,
Can I ask you a question then?
At first, it was like, I'm like, it doesn't really fit with who she was before.
So let me-
But then again,
let me get
what
through-
happens after 60 years?
Let me get through the rest of this, and I have a question for you then, if that's how you feel. So they basically go on a tour. They talk about blueberries, yada yada. Where am I? I'm sorry.
Blueberries.
Okay. So we find out later on that after the events of what happened in Revolutions and Neo basically saving everybody, that Morpheus was unanimously elected to high chair of the council. They look at a lovely, well, not lovely, they look at a ridiculous statue of him. It was really stupid. It was poorly constructed. I didn't like the statue at all. Okay. Okay.
Well, I mean, they worked with what they had.
Sure. They start talking about how the machines are now at war with one another because of a power scarcity, that a new power is emerging within the Matrix that Morpheus ignored because he believed that what Neo did would not be undone. And Neo doesn't care about any of this. He just really cares about getting Trinity back into his life. General Niobe is scared and has Neo locked up. But oh my god, he breaks out with the crew and they're off to try to free Trinity. I have a question. What happened to Zion? How?
The war.
What war?
The war.
There was no war. The war
Sentinels.
ended. They
No,
left.
no.
They left the people
It was-
alone, and there was
That's what I
peace.
said earlier. It was the machines fighting against each other.
And they destroyed Zion because they were fighting each other.
They were in the middle of it.
That was explained.
That's where
that
they
was
had- that's where
explained
they had their
here
war.
or anywhere else in this movie. That the machines,
I
that
think
the
it was in the
machines and their
flashback.
war, their civil war somehow trickled down into Zion, and that's what destroyed Zion.
I think it was kind of implied when she had her flashback and she was explaining that.
But when she had her flashback, they were looking at what was going on in Machine City. They weren't in Zion.
I don't know. I don't know.
Chuck?
No comment.
That's a giant hole in this movie that they do not
Yeah, I guess
explain.
so.
They do not explain what happened to Zion, and they do not explain why Niobe is so afraid. It's just we got to gloss over this because we need to get to Trinity. Yay!
Well, they explain why Niobe is afraid, because Niobe tells him why she was afraid. Was every morning when she woke up to the silence, she's like, "Do you hear that?" And he's like, "Yes." And she's like, "The noise that happens." She's like, I got so used to the noise of the Matrix and the noise of all of this that it took me forever to grasp this for the first time. And now I'm afraid to go back to what it used
So
to
she's
be.
so
I
she's
can
just paranoid.
She's paranoid. Because the machines are still out there. So the possibility of something like that happening, it's kind of like that you're always looking over your shoulder type deal. She's always waiting for the worst to happen. So I can understand that. I think, honestly, they all left Zion and came to Io to relocate and make a whole new place to hide, so that the way if the machines did come after them, they couldn't find them again, because the machines knew where Zion was. So that secret's out. The machines know where Zion
But
is.
if there's
they don't know where Io is.
if there's peace, and Bugs is reiterating that there is peace, why do they need to relocate if there's peace?
Because Niobe still has the fear that it will be broken, so they relocate.
So
Fear
I'm
will
going
make you
to
do a lot of crazy
hang on.
things.
I'm going to uproot hundreds of people and move them from their homes because I'm paranoid.
100%. 100%. That's why when you see them go into broadcast depth in Zion, you can still see the bridges that are still
Fine.
there. they're all just falling apart because it's been 60 years since they've been there.
Fine.
But-
I have no problem with that at all. If you want to say that, after 60 things are decrepitated because there was no upkeep in Zion, I'm 100% on board with
Right.
you. But I'm saying that this.
But in her mind, and I'm guessing in the people's mind too, to a degree, is for a long time the machines are still the enemy, and they still are the enemy, and they could renege on their promise whenever they want, and the machines know exactly where Zion is. They have to relocate.
She makes a point to say that Zion was stuck in the past, stuck in war, and that Aya was built with us and them. So, I think, okay, they left this way too open for me. It's way too ambiguous, and you have to do a lot of guesswork to, finally understand exactly what happened to Zion. There's no clear-cut answer. So her motivations to me are no. Like, I don't understand why she's so afraid. I don't understand why she's afraid. I don't understand why she's afraid of Neo coming back. I don't understand what exactly is going on. And later on, to Lee's point, how, Bugs confronts her about freeing minds. I don't understand why she's afraid of freeing minds. It's like, if her entire character right now is just, I'm paranoid, that's kind of stupid. That's just, okay, fine. Anyways, like I was saying, Neo was able to break out of his cell, and he's back on the ship, and we're off back into the Matrix to try to rescue Trinity, which is exactly what this movie becomes from this point out. It is mission rescue Trinity until the end. The crew are in some kind of warehouse, and they are ambushed by what is explained to us as exiled. It's basically just a bunch of people from the scene in Reloaded, where the first big kung fu fight scene that happens in Reloaded with all those people, it's basically them, and the Merovingian is there, and he's spouting a bunch of nonsense. Everybody in the scene, for some reason, is a bullet sponge. Like, they shoot at them, they unload clips on, like, all of these people that are around, and it's just like nothing happens. One guy even, like, grins his teeth, and there's a bullet lodged right there. It's ridiculous.
I'm the Merovingian in here. Was it not one of the funniest things you've
seen?
It was
hilarious.
Just to see him all just
it was
like
hilarious.
A bum, like a hobo, just disheveled, and him just like spouting out total nonsense.
He did have one line that was kind of clever. Like, we back in the day had conversation, not this beep 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 beep. He like almost like he hates cell phones. Like, it's great. Like his whole character was ridiculous,
hilarious.
but it was awesome at the same time.
It was hilarious.
It was pretty cool. So, anyways, they are surrounded, and Smith comes out of nowhere, and he basically gives Neo an ultimatum. I just want you to stay out of the Matrix and leave the analyst to me. And it's pretty much not going to happen because they have to get Trinity. And an entire fight scene breaks out. There's gunfighting and kung fu and all types of martial arts, poorly done, by the way, going on above.
He still knows kung fu.
Yeah, we get that line.
But he's not really doing it.
He's not really doing it at all. He's just
but he still knows it.
He's just kind of blocking. Like, there was a lot of clever camera work going on here to hide what Keanu Reeves just cannot do anymore.
I don't see how he cannot do it anymore, considering John Wick. Did he hurt himself?
I have no idea. But I mean, it's...
I mean, they've been doing this movie for years. They've been working on this film.
Yeah. I'm not saying that you're wrong.
Weird.
I think John Wick, this is a really poor excuse, but John Wick is more gunfight, blow him up, bang, bang. And
yeah, but it was still like gun kata stuff, right? He was still like fighting.
Kinda. I don't know. I see where you're coming from.
I'll have to rewatch.
I see where you're coming from, though. Anyways, so lots of gunfights and lots of martial arts going on above, and Neo and what is Smith are down below in a lower level, and they're having their big back and forth battle. For the most part, it's pretty even keeled. I'm not gonna hate on this scene all too much until Smith goes to strike him, and Neo basically puts up his force field shield type deal and stops him from getting hit, and then just blows him away with the force. Jedi.
I mean, didn't he break his jaw at one point too, which was kind of cool?
Yeah, he punches him in the jaw, and Smith, basically just rocks and cracks it back into place. It was
Well, what's funny about that is if you know anything about like the human body, that's not how you reset a jaw.
well, he's a machine.
Like, he just like
he's a program. He can do whatever he wants. This is different.
I guess so.
I
Yeah,
mean,
okay.
listen, if this happens in like the real world, if we start seeing people like put jaws back into place in Machine City, then you have you have a big complaint.
It kind of has to come out, like not just go to the side. It has to go out and then. There's a specific way it goes in. It's not just like a puzzle piece. I mean, yeah, it's like a puzzle piece. You can't just put it in any which way you want.
I don't know.
Anyway,
I don't know.
It's not a real human jaw, though.
Yeah,
so.
that's my thing too. I'm not gonna hate on that. He's a program. He's not real. He can do what the average man cannot.
Because even what happens to the analyst would never happen in real either.
oh, which was hilarious.
Blah, 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 blah.
Right.
Or blah.
So, the crew makes their way out of this warehouse and they eventually find Trinity, who's working in her bike shop. They have a quick talk about how she had a dream that they were being traced by cops and that Neo was on the back of her bike. Then all of a sudden everything freezes and the analyst shows up out of nowhere and he's basically showing his version of Bullet Time but on steroids. Because everything
It was actually a really cool scene.
Down. It is.
I think this was probably the best scene in the movie, just because we were getting an explanation of like, okay, what's going on here and some kind of stuff, but it's still, I don't know. We got to see Neil Patrick Harris not just be this, guy behind a desk type character, right. But I liked the way that he played it up.
I 100% agree with you. I really like Neil Patrick Harris
love
in this
his
movie.
I love his lines. I love how he's ripping on his predecessor, and just saying like basically going over the importance of like nobody cares about facts. It's all about feelings. We have to make people feel comfortable in order to live in this world. And I'm like, oh, it's actually really well put together.
So I was going to get into it later, but you're absolutely right. The dichotomy between the analyst and the architect are. The analyst cares about feeling, the architect cares about numbers, and both of them are so biased towards those that it was eventually their undoing. And I really like that they introduced that
not so much cares, but focuses on.
Sure.
It's not like they're like, ooh, I love feelings. It's like, no, he focuses on that because he knows that's a way to manipulate.
And he's avoiding everything else.
Right.
Like the architect did not care 1 ounce about what anybody felt. He only cared about ergo vis-a-vis. Good joke. He only cares about what the numbers say. And here we are with the analyst who only cares about feeling, and he's not really paying attention to what the numbers are telling him. So it's really, I really like that juxtaposition there. It's really interesting the way that was done.
You know what's funny is this right here is also again, I'm going to say this. It's the best way to hide the truth is in plain sight.
Mm-hmm.
This right here is it's 100%. Hey, look, everybody. Here's what our government in America is doing to us today. If we can wrap you up in emotions, we can control you.
Right.
Mm-hmm. Because with all the facts and all the numbers and all the science behind everything that's going on, it doesn't matter. It's the emotion behind it. And guess what? They are putting it in plain sight and people are falling for it.
Right.
So yeah, it kind of gets into that a little bit more when the analyst gives somewhat of an exposition dump here. He basically says that the two of them were resurrected. You actually see a little bit of this resurrection scene, which is gruesome. You see brains hanging out and just machines crawling all over their bodies and everything. It's wild the way that this entire scene comes together. It really looked amazing for what it was. Anyways, like I was saying, the analyst goes into this whole thing about how they were resurrected for a purpose. And I really don't know why they were resurrected, but what the analyst found out is that if they keep Neo and Trinity together, but not touching, just close enough, they generate a lot of energy. And for some reason, this translates into 99% of the population will just remain sheeple and happy and in their pods.
Yep.
So the fact that Neo and Trinity are close enough, this makes it possible for sheeple to remain sheeple. That's what I'm getting from
Sheeple,
this.
I love that.
That's what I'm getting from this explanation.
I think this was such a political slap in the face, to be honest.
Really.
Mm-hmm.
I'm huge into politics. I don't talk about it in a lot of things. But
That's why we're
even using
friends,
the word
'cause you don't talk about a lot of people.
Right. Even using the words sheeple, I mean the ridiculousness 2 years into what's been going on, now going into 3 years what's going on. People are still buying into the emotion of everything, disregarding any and all fact. And in this, people are disregarding any and all, factual numbers of what's going on, and he's using the emotion to control people,
Right.
To manipulate people, to keep them fearful and at bay.
Right.
And I think that this right here is a political slap in the face to everything that's going on today.
Absolutely.
100%. Because think about it. You have people coming in on TV and saying, one thing, and everyone's like, oh my gosh, I have to now do that, when there's nothing that backs that up. There's nothing that backs up anything that he's really saying, except for the truth of the matter is, if you control people's emotion, you will get more of a reaction out of that than if you just give them statistics, which is why he's getting more generated power out of all these people, because he's using the emotion, whereas the architect was just getting, this run-of-the-mill, the facts are the facts, but it doesn't hype you up.
Oh, you're
hyping
talking about the
people up by
movie.
manipulating them.
Oh, I thought you were talking about politics still. Never mind.
Well, going back and forth.
No, he's talking. He's talking about politics.
I know.
He's
I
talking
know.
about politics.
And the movie, but this part of the movie was, that's why I was saying the truth. The best way to hide the truth is right in front of your face.
Mm-hmm.
It's right in front of everyone's face, and people aren't going to get it. They're not going to connect the two because it's right in front of their face.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Speaking of right in front of their face, I love this scene where Trinity's buddy there, Kush, is basically turned on to swarm mode and shoots a gun at her, right, as he's explaining all this. And as this bullet is just slowly coming, he's talking, he's being all cool. And they got that scene where he takes the bite out of the apple, and then he puts the apple up and has the bullet go through it. It just shatters the apple.
Yeah.
I just thought, like, it was visually an awesome scene.
Stylistically, it's really cool.
It was really well done. And then, basically grabbing the bullet just as it touches her skin. So all she feels is a slight, like, tickle, when she comes back. It was really, it was pretty cool.
I do like too how Neo he speeds up and then slows right down. Then he speeds up a little bit, then he slows right down.
Right.
Because he's almost trying to break what the analyst is doing.
Right.
I appreciated that too.
See, I looked at that as the analyst kind of messing with him a little bit. Like, I'm going to let you speed up a little bit and then slow you down a little bit. That's kind of how I took it. I don't think Neo was actually doing that, because if you pay attention to a lot of what's going on in this movie, Neo's not that powerful. Like, all he's doing is basically using force stuff. He's really not doing much else. So I like the idea that the analyst is kind of giving him a little, taking away, giving him a little bit more, taking it away. Like, it's really
Taking it away. Right.
I don't know.
I like that.
So, anyways, like I was saying, so as Lee put out with everything that happened with the apple, and then for some reason it's escape time, and we're back in Io for some reason. I must have blanked out anything of significance that happened in between these two scenes, but they're just basically back in Io. And General Niobe is ranting and raving about responsibility, and she's not happy with Bugs at all over again. It's pretty much a rehash of a lot of what they were talking about earlier. Then a giant bird comes and pays them a visit, and they basically have to go somewhere, and they end up at this well. And it's Santi. This is the same actress from Revolutions. Like when Neo was in the train station. And I thought that was really cool that they found this girl and just like, hey, you want to come back and reprise your role as Santi? Yeah, sure. Which, again, if this is...
Well, up until this scene, she was in and out of the whole movie.
Okay, so she was the girl with the glasses who kind of winked at Neo that I know I skipped over. I don't know where else she was.
It was in that whole
The
when they're
montage?
talking the montage.
Okay.
She was in that montage 3 or 4
Okay.
different times.
I see.
Because he's doing the loop. When he goes through his loop and he's seeing the birds in the air do it, and he has the duck on his
Yeah.
head and he's sitting in the bathtub. That whole montage, she's in that because he's going to see her every day, and he keeps running into her
Right.
every day. And you see her 3 or
The
4
birds
times.
on the birds in the sky and the duck on his head is a little bit more on the nose now that I'm thinking about it, with now her like manifesting as this giant bird. I think it's actually really cool. And I think it's even better that when you're first or second time through it, like for me, I did not recognize her until this moment. And then I was like, oh my God, that's okay. Like, and it's
Right.
perfectly designed that way, because how would you know? She does not look anything like she looked like 20 years ago. So there's no way that you would be able to recognize her. And I thought that that was really cool. So again, to your point, just, you know, hiding things in plain sight. I think that's really clever. Right. So Niobe and Neo basically go and pay Santi a visit. They are given this long exposition dump about how her father was responsible for building the machine that resurrected the two of them, and the whole story about how Neo and Trinity are the same and equals, and the analyst needs them both. It's a lot of mumbo jumbo. Basically, what it is it's an excuse for them to go get Trinity.
Yep.
Okay. Okay. Since Neo escaped his pod, now the analyst pretty much has a decision to make, because the power source is now pretty much only drawing on Trinity, which I don't understand how that happens. If the movie is telling me that the two of them together or close to one another is what generates all of this energy, why is it just coming off of one person now? That to me doesn't make a whole lot of sense. It really doesn't add up when
It generates the most energy. So him by himself and her by himself isn't the full power. They're still getting some energy, just not the most energy.
I don't know. I think that I'm not gonna, harp on it too much. I just think it's a little bit loose. So the powers that be, who are above even the analyst, have a decision to make. And they just want to, cut power and revert back to a prior version of the Matrix in order to, supply Machine City with all of this power. But the analyst convinces them malicious way, because he's assured that Neo is going to return to his pod because it's the only home that he got. And if he doesn't, then he'll just kill Trinity and move on with his life. So, smart move here is for all of the captains to volunteer to go and try to rescue Trinity. Why? Why is any of this happening? You're putting everybody in jeopardy. Everybody's in danger now. Your paranoid general, like, uprooted a whole bunch of people and moved them to Io, and now she's just willy-nilly, well, let's go back to Machine City and try to rescue Trinity against the wishes of Machine City, I guess. It doesn't make any sense.
It doesn't. I don't see what the point of it was.
Anyways.
It was just a kickback to the original. That's all.
That's-
That point was.
So,
That's
it's Operation Rescue
That's all it
Trinity.
was.
It's Operation Rescue Trinity from here on out. Neo walks into a coffee shop. I love the name of this coffee shop. It's called Simulate.
Simulate.
I think that was really cool.
So good.
Simulate. The analyst is in there, and he's heavily guarded. I mean, there are just guards and FBI and cops and there were even like dudes decked out in military gear just all around him trying to protect this poor guy. Sure, let's just keep going. And basically an ultimatum is made. If Trinity wants to leave, she can leave. If she wants to stay here, you win, and I'll return to my pod, yada, yada, yada.
Yep.
Okay. If the analyst doesn't agree to this, the crew has been ordered to basically pull the plug on Neo, and the analyst has no other option but to agree with everything that's going on. Neo and Trinity have a face-to-face, and she starts to kind of come around until her children and her husband show up, begging her to come home, and she's willing to leave. But then, all of a sudden, for some reason, she snaps out of it, and she basically starts to wreck house. And Neo does his little Jedi trick, and force pushes everybody off of him who have surrounded him. The analyst is seeing what's going on. He begins to think that he now doesn't have the upper hand. Well, I'm sorry. Let me back up. The analyst sees everything is going on and turns on his bullet time trick, thinking that he has the upper hand all over again, until Smith shows up, puts an end to him, and now the coffee shop is utter chaos. There's a lot of fighting, there's a lot of shooting, Neo and Trinity reach out, they touch each other, and a force explosion happens and everybody goes flying. The analyst enacts swarm mode. Smith kills the analyst in a way, basically turning him back into code and sending him somewhere. We find out later that that's not really what happens. They have to escape. Somebody actually asks Neo if he can still fly. He tries to. The ground ripples, but it's not gonna happen at all.
Yeah, not gonna happen.
Not gonna happen. Not gonna happen. Trinity shows up on her bike. Neo gets on the back of it. The two of them fly off together, and he's force propelling, pushing all types of things away from him. And if the coolest thing, gruesome, but the coolest thing that I saw in this movie is people who are sleeping in their beds in high-rise apartment buildings start jumping out of their windows kamikaze style, going through trucks and cars and everything else. I don't know why.
I gotta say that was an interesting scene. Just when how it started with, you know, two people like getting ready for bed or whatever, or sleeping, and then he just wakes up and leaves, and she's like, "Where are you going?"
And she's just screams.
Yeah, like it was actually, I like that they didn't just show like some guy just jump out his window, but it showed somebody who just lost their husband or whatever, who decided to jump out, and you start to think like, what is that doing to this poor woman? You know,
I guess so. I was more interested in why this happened. Like, why do people have to be jumping out of the window kamikaze style? Like, okay, it's a dude with his woman on a bike and like one car that's on their side, and they're both like flying down the street at high speeds, and you need hundreds of people to start jumping out of their windows. Like,
yeah, I don't understand.
I don't understand that at all. And to your point,
Nope.
to your point about wasting power, like this seems like a waste. Like you probably could have been able to do this with just the swarm that you have on the street. Like these hundreds of zombies that are already there. You really didn't need people to start like dive bombing out of their windows like to their deaths. That seemed a little bit unnecessary. Cool to see, not complaining, but at the same time, okay. That was a little bit much. Yeah, okay.
Yep.
The two of them end up on a roof. There is a helicopter that fires a live missile at them. Neo force projects it away from the two of them, guiding it into another helicopter, and the helicopter explodes with spectacular fashion. Then the two of them join hands and leap off of the roof. Trinity is able to...
Well, that helicopter actually hits the roof, and it reproduces that ripple we see
You're
with
right.
the first helicopter.
You're absolutely
in the first
right.
movie.
You're absolutely right.
And they did it, and it looked really cool because the whole building
did
this
it,
time
yeah.
kind of, it looked
You
really,
were 100%
really cool.
right,
Yeah.
sir. Yes.
Right.
And I think too the with them with the whole swarm thing, I think when you get to a place, you know, and this is more of a human reaction than it is a machine reaction, which is why it tends to make no sense. But when you get to this place where you're like, oh my gosh, if I don't handle this, I'm going to lose everything. So I'm going to throw everything I have at it. I think the analyst is just throwing everything he has at it to prevent this from happening, hoping that I can just stop it sooner than later. So the ironic part of that is it's a human reaction, not a machine's reaction. So that's kind of like where you're seeing, you know, the difference between the analyst and the architect. The architect would never have done that because he's more analytical and specific and by the numbers to stay true to his character of, you know, staying true to the emotions. The analyst just keeps utilizing his emotion to project everything at Neo at this point, which is why he's throwing all those people at him. He's like, oh, I'm just going to do whatever I can to make this happen.
Yeah.
Is it needed? No, but it just shows the fear of the analyst of losing what he really needs.
Absolutely.
I'm really curious to see if we do get more movies out of this franchise. If there's like a power that rises as kind of like a healthy combination of both.
I hope.
That'd be interesting.
I think that would be a lot more interesting. Like at this point now, when you look at the architect and you look at the analyst, they're so easily foiled because of how predictable each of them were. But if you have somebody that's like a healthy combination of both, taking everything into consideration when building like the next iteration of whatever the Matrix is going to be, I think that's much more interesting, and it would be much more harder to overcome than just, oh, we're going to kick your jaw off now. Like, I don't know.
Yeah.
I just think that would be a lot better. Anyways, so the two of them on this roof decide that they are going to join hands and jump off of this building, and if they fly, they fly. If they fall, they fall. Neo is not able to fly, but Trinity, however, is. She just looks around. The roaring theme that straight out of the original movie comes roaring up on the score. I thought that was a really cool touch for this moment, and Trinity flies off.
It was really interesting because the way that she flew was not like, I mean, I guess we never really saw Neo start to fly, but it was like, I don't know.
Actually, the original theme didn't happen here. It happened after they go to the analyst's house.
I will get to that closing song.
Yeah,
I will get there.
We'll get
I have
there.
a lot to say about that.
Yeah.
I'm talking about the score. I'm not talking about the song. I'm talking about the score.
Not the cover?
Like,
Okay.
Yeah, no. So when you because
all I was getting at was the way that she flew. I don't know, it just reminded me of like some other stuff, but not the Matrix. Like it looked like somebody who got superpowers, not like somebody who you know, that was a difference. Like when we saw him fly,
Neo's liftoff is epic to watch.
Right.
This was just like, oh, I can fly now. Zip.
It's like, oh, I'm on a wire.
Yeah, pretty much.
Like that's what it was. It almost reminded me of I'm thinking in Hook where he's like, Daddy, I'm a daddy, and then he's like, I lost my happy thought. And he falls down and he like stops and floats. He's kind of like hanging there for a second. That's what was happening here. They were just kind of hanging there for a second, like both unsure of what was going on, and just kind of floating there. And then she's like, all right, we're going up, or like she's like, bye bye or something.
She just
right?
says
And then
bye.
she takes off.
Bye.
Yeah.
And then she just flies off. It's the most awkward thing in the world.
It was really weird. It was way too weird.
Oh my god.
It just didn't make sense to me.
There's a lot about how this movie ends that doesn't make a lot of sense. There's a lot of things that happen in these last two acts in this movie that just don't land for me and don't make sense at all. But we've been over all that, and I'm done talking about it. Anyways, later on, we see these two, Neo and Trinity, both play the analyst a visit. For some reason, the side of the analyst office is just missing. Like it looks like a bomb.
It blew off.
It blew off.
Yeah, they blew it off before they showed up there.
They blew right.
Okay,
they blew it
I
off.
must have forgot about that part. Then I apologize. So they blow off the
it's
side
just,
of this
you
building.
see it just kind of blow off.
Okay, I didn't.
Like before she shows up, it just blows off, and then she comes in.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, they pay the analyst a visit. Trinity's not happy about the name. The analyst says, come on, it was just a little joke. And she kicks his jaw off.
Tiffany? Really?
She kicks his jaw off. I love how his jaw got kicked off, and you see like the gaping hole where his jaw used to be is like part blood, part code. I thought that was really cool. Like just the visual of it to see. She snaps her fingers, his jaw is back. He makes another remark, another really sexist remark about how obedient she is, and she slits his throat. And then snaps her fingers again, and all of a sudden he's fine.
But she slits it like all the way through, where his head just goes completely. like there's no other sound effect that fits with that. But
it's unbelievable. The analyst. The analyst wrongly.
But it wasn't gruesome. It was more comedic than anything.
I think that was the point of what the scene was
what?
supposed to be. It was supposed to be more comedic than anything. I don't know. See, here's the thing, and here's the thing about that. I don't.
It's not very. Aside from Freddy Krueger, which is just like sick. Like it's not very often that you slit somebody's throat and it's comedic. That's my point.
I think it's just.
But he's a program, so it's okay.
He's a program. It's okay, and it's Neil Patrick Harris. I think that's what makes it funny. I think if it was anybody else, I don't think it would have been as funny as this.
Yeah.
So that's my thoughts on the matter. I also like that when she slits his throat, that also turns into code. But she snaps his fingers and he's perfectly fine again and he stands up. the analyst gives this speech about how the sheeple are going to stay happy in their pods because they love my world, and the two of you are going to return to yours because reasons, and it's really not going the way that he thinks things are going to go. And they say, we're going to change a couple of things here, and that's when you get the line, maybe we'll turn the sky into rainbows. And they fly off together. They can both fly now, everything's fine, and they both fly off together.
Nope. Neo can't fly. She carries
No,
him.
he's flying.
That's why he walks up. He comes through the door in the apartment because he walks up the stairs.
They
both
both fly out of the side of the building together. They
Oh,
both
that's
fly
right,
out of
you're
the side of
right.
the
They do
building
fly
together,
together.
and they do the whole thing in the sky, how they're together and they're flying around each other, and everything's lovey-dovey and happy at the end of this thing. And then the movie ends, and we get the worst.
Then you see George Lucas and Carrie Fisher float up in the back.
Sure.
Oh wait, no, sorry, that's
And then we get the worst cover I've ever heard in my life. I am a massive Rage Against the Machine fan. Whoever this is not Rage Against the Machine. This was the worst cover in the world. This is such a disgrace to wake up. It's ridiculous. I don't know why they felt the need to end it this way. I don't know what Lena Wachowski was thinking.
They could have just used the original song.
Just use the original song. Just use the original
Right.
song. Or use anything else from those 3 albums. But you did not have to do it like this. My God. My God.
Yeah, so dude, that was actually Brass Against.
Who?
Brass Against.
They need to stop. They need to stop.
No, it's actually kind of cool.
No, it's
Brass
not.
Against.
No, it's not.
Stop.
I don't want to hear
cool
you
that they
justify
did it
this. I don't want to hear you say that this band is cool.
It's not cool.
No, stop. I'm done. Never again. Never again. Never again. This was horrible. They desecrated a classic.
If this is your first introduction to Brass
yes,
Against,
it is.
then I'm not surprised.
This is a desecration of a classic song. No, absolutely not. Stop. Retire. Stop. If there's anything that I care more about movies, it's music, and Lee knows this about me. So this is a really big thing for me. No, this was horrible. This is the worst. I listened to it all in awe. Like, my jaw is on the ground at how bad this was. I don't care. I know that might sound harsh. I don't usually tell anybody to stop what they're doing or retire, but in this case, just stop. Just stop.
Dude, it's a bunch of brass instruments.
I don't care.
Doing Rage Against the Machine. It's like a gimmick.
I don't care. It's horrible. It's horrible.
I'm sorry. I have laughed through most
That's
of this
fine.
podcast because everything for some reason it does not change my mind.
I don't want it to. Let me be clear. I don't want it to.
Hold on,
I don't
hold on,
want to
hold
change
on.
anybody's mind. That's not what I
I
ever
get
try to
that.
do.
What I'm trying to say, no, I get that. But what I'm trying to say is everything that we're talking about and everything you guys are saying is 100% true. I just don't care. I still like the movie.
That's fine.
And I'm sitting here listening to it going, yes, there are massive holes. Yes, it makes no sense. But for some reason, I still like the movie.
I think the big thing for me is there's a point in this movie where it stops being about the Matrix and starts being about Rescue Trinity, and that's the point where I check out. That's the point where this movie starts to make absolutely zero sense for me. And everything that happened,
I 100%,
everything that happened after,
and the feel of the movie
completely
changes in that
does
moment.
a complete 180.
100%.
Does a complete 180.
And I totally agree. For some reason, still like the movie though.
And it's fine, man. It's fine that you like it.
It's just, but I guess for me, it's one of those guilty pleasures. You know, I'm gonna put this up there. This for me is Batman Forever Batman Forever for Lee. Like, if we did a podcast to Batman Forever, it would be Will and I would be having the same conversation, and Lee would be in my shoes right now. And you 100% know that.
I think Lee would do about a week's worth of research to endlessly justify why that movie is better than it actually is. He'd be pulling out. He would be pulling out. He'd be pulling out quotes. He'd be pulling out budgets. He'd be pulling out. This is what. This is what Jim Carrey had to say, and this is what Arnold Schwarzenegger was actually trying to do.
You know what?
Schwarzenegger has nothing to do with Batman Forever.
Fine.
I'm gonna say
Batman
this.
and Robin is garbage. Absolute garbage.
I'm gonna say this.
Batman Forever could be a lot worse.
6 months from now, we're going to have a conversation, and I'm going to find a deleted scene that justifies why they shifted the feel of this movie to justify this movie.
I look forward to that. I honestly do.
I don't.
And you know what? I don't care.
Well, as we've said, maybe there's a deleted scene. I think that should be our tagline.
You know what?
That can be your tagline. Because that entire concept that you have, maybe I think it's ridiculous. I think it's a cop-out. I think it's so stupid.
Well,
but hey, man.
The reason I say that line, maybe there's a deleted scene, is mostly because I'm like, come on. Like, who thought this was okay to put out? Without
there's plenty of those movies though that are just awful.
But it just makes me think.
And this right here does not. This right here, it's. See, for me, it's like, okay, Will, you're not an Indiana Jones guy. I love the first 3 Indiana Jones. The 4th one, awful. Like, it doesn't compare to the
till
first
the
5th.
5th.
Oh my! I don't want to. This movie, for whatever reason, I appreciated it for what it was, and I went into it not expecting. When they first started the film, and it felt like I got that, I was like, "Ooh, this is like the first movie." I enjoyed that feeling. Everything else that happened, like the swarm mode, it started going somewhere and then didn't really go anywhere. You have, it switched from this mental breakdown to rescue. I get all of that, and I agree with all of that. But for whatever reason, I still enjoyed the movie, and I'm trying to sit there going, I'm not going to let it ruin it for me. And I hope, Lee, us giving you a hard time about Batman Forever doesn't ruin Batman Forever.
No, absolutely not. Absolutely not. I don't want to ruin. It's never my. Listen, it's never my intention to ruin your enjoyment of a film. If you love something and I didn't, I'm more than happy for you.
I'm just a very. Keep saying
let me finish. I'm just a very argumentative person by nature. So it's just
the fact that you guys think that I love this movie, Batman Forever.
You do.
Is what drives me insane. I don't love
it.
I just have an appreciation for it because I was a kid when it came out.
Love it.
I don't love this Matrix movie. I have an appreciation for it, for the purpose
you're
of it.
40.
And I enjoyed the movie.
You should know
You
better.
enjoyed Batman Forever.
Do not, Chuck.
Okay.
Do not believe him when he says he doesn't like that movie. I have known him for close to 30 years.
I didn't say I don't like
movie.
it.
You love that
I didn't say I don't like it.
You've tried.
I enjoy it.
You have endlessly tried.
But I don't love it.
Just watch it. Just watch it again. Just try. Just give it another shot. You have done that to me.
I said watch the deleted scenes.
No. Recently.
I said watch the deleted scenes.
Recently, you've been on board with the deleted scenes. But prior to like 3 years ago, before you even knew about them, just watch it again.
I will say this.
No, that was me telling you to watch Gotham. You're confusing it.
I will say this. Before I joined the podcast with you guys, and Lee introduced me to it, I was listening to it. Aside from Star Wars and MCU, the only other movie that is constant, or Terminator, those 3 universes, aside from those 3 universes, the only other movie that is brought up consistently is Batman Forever.
You know why?
By him.
Because
because it was something that came up 2 years ago in a conversation, and he still hasn't seen my side of it. It's not like I've spent the past 30 years, plus years, whatever. No, I haven't.
Yes, you have. Yes, you have.
No.
Yes, you have. Yes, you have, man.
Dude, if I can sit here and admit it and say, you know what? Equilibrium for me is a guilty pleasure.
Uh-huh.
I enjoy the movie. I know it's filled with holes. It's up there with Batman Forever. Let it be one of your guilty pleasures.
I have absolutely no problem with that, but it's just the fact that he's sitting here right now saying that he doesn't do what he does. There's 2 constants with you, my friend. Back to the Future and Batman Forever. Those are the 2 constants with you all the time. I don't know why you sit here and say that it's not. Like, that's what bothers me so much. Just own it, man.
How often do I bring up Back to the Future?
All the time.
All the time.
Well, if we're talking about time travel,
even
yes,
when we're
all
not
the
talking
time.
about even when we're not talking about time travel.
Mm.
I'm pretty sure you bring up
I
Back to
think-
the Future quite often. Come on. There's
It is-
nothing
It's your
wrong with
fa-
it.
You have it tattooed
Neither
to your
one
arm.
of us.
Listen, I have
Here's
a
the
lot
thing.
of things.
Here's the thing.
tattooed.
Neither one of us are saying that it's a problem. The only one that's finding
I
issue
know.
right now is you.
I know, because you're saying that I love it. I don't love it. I appreciate it.
That's right. You. I think you like it more than you're letting us.
I agree
to
with
believe.
No, you you believe I love it
You do
more
not.
than I
You do not bring up.
appreciate
Hang on. You do
it.
not bring up Batman Forever the way that you do, and that consistently. If you do not love it,
No, I have an addiction to arguing. That's the issue.
that means nothing.
No, well, that's
That
true.
means nothing.
That is true. But you try to. Before I even joined what is now Black and White Productions, I never, the trilogy that we are, the three of us. It was just the two of you for the longest time. When I listened to it, every single time it was brought up, it was. You'd find a new appreciation to it if you just watched the
Yes,
deleted
because
scenes.
we were in the
It
middle. We
changes
were in the middle of a
everything.
year-long argument.
We're in the middle of it. Hang on. The deleted scene thing, right there. The deleted scene thing is in the middle of a year-old argument for him, but it's a 30-year argument for the two of us when it comes to that movie.
No.
Yes, it. Okay.
No.
All right. Fine.
Listen.
Okay. You know
the
what?
Matrix
Let me just
Resurrections.
ask. Let me ask. Chuck, who do you believe?
In what?
Thank you.
Oh, you definitely.
I believe it.
'Cause
I
know
believe.
me.
I believe
'Cause
in Harvey Dent.
I believe in Harvey Dent too.
Good for you.
Okay.
I will put
Which
this out there.
Harvey
Lee is one
Dent?
of my best friends. Lee is one of my best friends, and I can sit there and say, you know what? I can start a sentence and be funny with it, and Lee will pick up on it in 13 seconds.
No less.
Like-
Less. Usually less.
Less,
Except for
yeah.
the
I'll be
except for the
thinking it
mouse.
and he'll
Except
finish
for the
it.
mouse this morning.
That was pretty funny.
It wasn't because I'm like, I just don't understand what you're saying to me until
Once you
I
caught
was
on,
like
it was
out in the other
funny.
room and I'm like, oh, you're just
I'm a jerk.
yeah.
But I as much as Will knows you, Lee, I know you, and it's like maybe not as much, but I hang out with you more now. So, and I hear what's going on, and it's a constant. It's a constant. It's not like it's like once in a while.
I
it's
just
brought up.
want my foot massage day when somebody goes, okay. Okay. Like that's all I'm fighting for. I don't care anymore. I just want someone to say that part was cool. Like
Lee.
You know what? I want that day when you know what. I would love it if you enjoyed Equilibrium like I did, but you don't, and that's
Not
okay.
anymore.
I will say this. I'm a little tired. Anyways, this was a good one. This is probably
this is one of my
this is a good
my
one.
more
This was a good one.
favorite
This was a good one.
podcasts.
But
I am
I like the fact that for the first time it's a movie that, like you said this before, we're not all in agreement with everything.
and that's kind of what I want to do a lot more of. We do a lot of MCU stuff here. We do a lot of Star Wars stuff here, and it's getting, to me, honestly, it's just getting a little bit repetitive that we just come on here and I love this, I love that, this was awesome, this was amazing, all right, bye. Like, I kind of want to do more movies where we're divided, which is why in a few weeks, spoiler warning, which is why in a few weeks we're going to be doing Terminator 3, because Lee has quite a bit to say about Terminator 3.
we already did it. I'm pretty sure you have it somewhere on your hard drive.
done.
Can we just release
It's
the old
done.
one? I don't want to do it again.
You're doing it again.
I can't wait to be a part of this one.
Oh man, there's a hang on,
again.
And little nugget here. There's a rubber chicken.
There's a rubber chicken. Oh no.
There's a rubber chicken. I will leave it on that. And with that, we are done for the night. I am tired. Pretty sure the two of you would like to get to bed. This was a quick one. Have a good one, everybody.
See you later.
Have a good one, guys.